Hello, hello, hello. How is everybody? Welcome, welcome. Hi, Chris. Hi, Rascal. Early birds. How are we doing today? Good, good. Doing well also. Oh, I hear a little dog barking outside. Oh, you got some rain? That's good. We haven't gotten any rain here. I had to go out and spray things down with a hose a little bit in the backyard. Make sure my flowers don't die. But I think we're supposed to get some rain this weekend, so that's Hey, Haley Baobab, welcome. Rat Kane, hi. How's it going today? Get started in about 1 minute here. How's my audio? Can y'all hear me okay? Too loud, too soft? Audio sounds great. Awesome. Perfect. I gotta say, this little blue snowball mic that I bought for like 30 bucks is really pretty good. It just needs a better stand. I'll pay more for the stand than I did for the mic. Hey, Zena. Oh, hey, Rufio, what's up? Yeah, this new start screen. This is the best that what is it? What is it? Owen 3D Pro or whatever. It's the best thing the best one I could get for free without having to pay for anything. Yeah, Blue does make good mics. Yeah. Free is my favorite price. Indeed. All right, and with that, with those words of wisdom, let's go ahead and get started. Hello. Hi. It's me. Welcome, welcome. Good to see everybody today. Um, oh, yeah. Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, and thank you for everybody who was understanding that it was my birthday this past weekend, and so I decided to have a little fun over the weekend, and so that's why there was no stream. So I appreciate everybody being understanding about that. But yeah, it was fun, and but I'm happy to be back and talking to you all. Yes, this is a good eye. This is a PlayStation shirt. You are correct. Yes. Hey, BJ, that's awesome. Roses are red, violets are blue. Console log, BJ follows you. Thank you, BJ. Oh, thank you, Jojo. Yeah, yeah, it was fun, and I'm not a party animal or anything, but we went to a museum, which I always appreciate, and we went to my favorite kind of museum, which is a museum that is also like inside of like a mansion, and so you get the double like you get all the stuff in the museum that you get to see, and then but the museum itself is also like art and like a fun thing to observe, and so yeah, that's like my favorite place to go on my birthday, and so glad I got that chance. So yeah, that was super fun, and yeah, that's how much of a party animal I am. My birthday, I go to a museum. You know me, wilding out. All right, well, but today we are here to talk about some banky. Um, yeah, museum. See, Rufio and I, we get each other, man. We get each other so much. Museums are the best, indeed. Yes. But yeah, today we're here to talk about banky, and we're gonna go over some behavioral questions tonight. We are the same person, Rufio, indeed. I feel like yeah, we got this. Rufio and I got a spiritual connection. I swear. Yep. Oh, real Scotty, man, museums in Scotland, loads. Yes, I Scotland is one of my favorite places on earth. I swear, I've been there twice. Love it every time. Scotland is my jam. Yeah, just the sights that they have there, just the landscape, everything. I love it. It's great. Oh, and I got to turn on captions. Yes, thank you, Streamflow Captioner, for reminding me. So give me 2 seconds to turn on captions. I will do that. Do it in another window here so it doesn't get deactivated. Laylo, thank you so much for the sub. Wow. Thanks so much. Oh, and that reminds me, so captions should be on now. And also, too, a couple other folks subscribed in between streams, and I always like to thank those folks. They think they can sneak it in there in between streams, but I always see it. So, Loving QT21 subscribed 2 days ago, so thank you so much, Levin. And one more person, Atherness. Atherness used those Bezos bucks, used their Prime subscription, and subscribed with Prime 5 days ago. So thank you so much, Atherness and Lovin. And just now, thank you, Laylo, as always. Hey, Kasama, welcome. Good to see you. Okay, so yes, we are going to do some banky tonight. And for those of you who are not familiar, banky is essentially it's just a giant bank of common interview questions that you're likely to encounter when you start doing interviews for technical type positions, whatever those positions might be. These are just some common questions that kind of cover all the bases. This isn't to say that you will have exactly these questions or that you'll have all of these questions. Of course not, you wouldn't have all of them, but this is just a good way to sort of get yourself familiar with your own accomplishments, get yourself comfortable in answering these types of questions so that if you encounter something similar, you'll have something in your mental brain bank and you'll just be able to pull it right out and be confident in your answer. Yeah. Hey, Frazee, welcome, and Tech Knight, hello. Good to see you. Yeah, so these questions are really nice to have. I think I can go ahead and share you a link to these questions. You can also get them, let's see. I want to share it so that hopefully this will just make it so that y'all can see it without necessarily editing. Not that I care that you edit, but we'll try this, see if y'all can open that. It has a few of the questions filled out already. We've previously done a session on banky. Tonight with the behavioral questions, we're probably not really going to fill them out because your answers are going to be sort of personal to you, but we are going to talk about kind of how to answer them. Oh, the link doesn't work? And welcome, by the way, Jay Harker. The other way you can get it is by going over to Leon's stream and going into his chat and typing !bank, and that will also get you access to the questions as well. Oh, thanks, Jay Harker. Yeah, so what we're going to do tonight, my plan for tonight is to kind of go through each of these behavioral questions and read each one. And first, I will answer it in how I would answer that question and sort of some of the things I might hit and things I might emphasize. And then we're also going to kind of make it be a little bit collaborative. Oh, thanks, Rascal. Rascal grabbed the link, and so did Mavi Sunshine. So use one of those links. Thank you so much to you both. Use one of those links, and that should get you a nice, clean copy of Banky if you don't already have a copy. But yeah, so after I answer the question, then what we're going to do is kind of turn it over to you guys, and you can ask questions about my answer. You could share some of your own experience, and we can kind of try to craft an answer to the question that kind of works with your experience. Um, we're going to kind of just, you know, take it easy tonight and play it by ear and see how things go. And if we get through all the behavioral questions, then we'll start into the technical questions as well, probably starting with HTML and CSS. I think we did a few of the CSS questions a month or two ago. And so we can just continue with those. But we'll see. We'll see. We're chilling tonight. We're taking it easy. And we'll just see how far we get. Rascal, the fastest link share in the land. Indeed. Rascal's on it with those. I think Rascal has like 6 monitors probably, and has like every single possible like window open. That's the only thing I can think of that they would be so quick. Oh, I'm sorry, Kuhi. Yeah, like I've said before, I have as many ads disabled as I possibly physically can. But it doesn't seem to work for some people. Some people never get any ads, and then some people get like tons. So I think it's just Twitch being stupid. But yeah, I don't know. I've done everything I can anyway. Hey, Interplanet. Oh, Cody. Okay. You used to stream, you totally get, yeah, you get it. All right. Okay. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. So I've got the questions pulled up here on my screen. I hope the text is big enough that everybody can see. Hey, Linda, welcome. So first of all, let's talk a little bit about kind of just prepping for an interview in general. So there's a few things that you can do to kind of just prep for an interview, no matter what kind of interview it might be. So the first thing, and some of this stuff may seem obvious, but it's still worth talking about. So the first thing is to know your own resume. So theoretically, you have a resume, and it should be up to date by the time you're going in for an interview. And so what you're going to want to do is make sure that you know everything that's on there. So even if it's stuff that you haven't maybe updated recently that you didn't really touch going into this particular interview, you're still going to want to know about that, and you're going to kind of want to have in your head the components of what you did for each thing that you have listed on your resume. So if I, was going into a job and I had on there a job that I had, straight out of college. Like straight out of college, I worked at Humana, which is a health insurance company, and I did basically entry level sort of analytics work. Well, I would want to have in my head, what are some of the things that I actually did at that job? Did I have some major projects that I contributed to? Did I collaborate on any teams? Did I maybe have a bad time? Did I have like, some interpersonal conflicts with people that I work with, anything like that? You're kind of gonna want to have that stuff in your head. And so that way you can use it as a component of a potential answer to an interview question. So it may seem obvious, but know what's on your resume and know what you did at each job. Not all the details, but just in general, top 3 things that I did at this particular job, or 3 memorable things from this particular job. Maybe you don't have a ton of work experience, and that's fine too. If you have some projects that you've done, like maybe that weren't paid work, but you did them on the side for funsies. Think about some challenges that you encountered with that project, or something really cool that you're excited about that you did for that project. Because your feelings, your excitement will show, and those genuine types of emotions are the easiest to bring across in an interview when you're kind of nervous. So know what you've done in the past, and go in there and expect to own it. Own your accomplishments. Now this is kind of a hard thing for folks sometimes. Own your accomplishments, be proud of what you've done, and know that you are worthy of those accomplishments. That's one thing when I've talked to a lot of folks, they've done cool, they'll tell me about all these cool things that they've done. They'll tell me about projects that they've done. They'll tell me about cool teams they've been on, cool places they've worked, people that they've helped. But they're almost like ashamed of it. It's hard for people to talk in a positive way about themselves sometimes, because they feel like they're bragging, or they feel like, oh, well, other people have done way cooler things than I have. I see people doing way cooler things than me all the time. But that doesn't matter. This is about you. This is about the cool things that you are selling yourself in this interview. The interviewer doesn't care about all those other people that have done cool things. They want to know about you. What have you done? And so the challenge is to be like, yes, I have done these things, And some of them are friggin' cool, and I really want to tell you about them. And I want to tell you what I've learned about them. I want to tell you the challenges that I have encountered when I have been doing these things. And you might say, okay, yeah, that's fine. That's all well and good. Like, I don't know what I've done. I haven't done anything. What the frick have I done? I've not done anything. Sometimes the best way to know what you've done is to have a conversation with someone else, in a neutral setting, in a setting that's not an interview, and let them tell you what you've done. Share your experience with them. And sometimes it might start out as just like, yeah, so I worked at McDonald's for 2 years. I was a fry cook. It'll start out, it's pretty, very like transactional, like very factual, like A, B, C. But then try to dig into that a little bit more. Okay, fine. When I worked as like a fry cook, what did I actually do? You know, I I served, I don't know, 300 customers a night. I balanced multiple competing priorities. Maybe you had two managers, and those two managers really hated each other, and you had to be the one to mediate between the two. And like, that's a valuable skill. And did you work as a team? Hells yeah, you worked as a team. A kitchen is a massive team. A kitchen is an incredibly complex machine. And so it's about like starting. It's fine if you start with the facts, but try to pick those things apart into the components, the actions that you actually performed, and the accomplishments within those actions. Do we refer to them as sir and madam? I know not gender stuff is. I wouldn't do sir and madam, at least in English. Tends to sound pretty formal. When you go into an interview, they'll give you a name that they want to be called. Maybe it's Mr. Adams. Maybe it's Joe. Let them kind of dictate the level of formality, and that'll just depend on the person. Some interviewers are gonna be like, yeah, call me Sam, and some interviewers will be like, call me Mr. Henderson, or call me Mrs. Anderson. And so you want to kind of get the vibe from them, and follow their lead. And that's pretty much what you'll want to do in general in the interview. Follow the lead of the interviewer, and still be genuine, be yourself, but follow the lead of the interview. As far as, are they going to want to joke around with you a little bit? Are they going to want to just get straight down to the facts, get straight down to business? Just kind of play off them. And that's another good reason to kind of practice a little bit. Talk with someone else in a neutral setting. Call me Captain Butterscotch. Yeah, Rufio, that's a great point. I feel like it's somewhat generational as well. If anyone called me Miss or Mrs., I'd feel super weird. Yeah, it just depends on age, generation. That's why I say, follow the lead of the interviewer, and they'll kind of give you. You should get a sense of the vibe as you're doing, the small talk, the introductions, that kind of thing. Yeah. What was your name again? Yeah. Exactly. You have a friend who had a boss that got mad when referred to by name, insisted on the title or boss. Yeah, see, everybody's different, right? Everybody is absolutely different. Oh, Lay Bob, thank you so much for continuing that gift sub. That's rad. Thank you. I'm gonna do a quick hydrate here. Yeah, when in Rome, indeed, Rascal. Yeah. No, like I was saying, so that sort of thing is a great way. Just try to have a neutral conversation with someone in your life. Maybe it's someone on the 100 Devs Discord. Maybe it's one of your friends. Maybe it's a relative. Just sit down and kind of talk through your work history with them, and together kind of collaborate, and have them tell you, like, be like, hey, I'm going to tell you my work history. Maybe you tell me a cool few things that you think are cool about it, or things that you think are noteworthy or neat. And so, that's a great way. If you get that outside perspective, that can sometimes kind of get you out of your own head, out of your own perceptions of your accomplishment, and get you to look at things in a more, objective way. Exactly. Oh, Tucker, thank you so much for this sub. Wow, thank you so much. Man, 3 month streak. That's rad. Thank you, Tucker. Yeah, go with the flow. And that's a great tip for any interview. Just go with the flow, go in there and kind of just try to integrate yourself with the vibe, whatever that vibe may be. Um, yeah, treat others as you would like to be treated. Indeed, absolutely. So that's just kind of some general tips to kind of get you thinking about, your own accomplishments and thinking about how to prep for an interview. So know yourself, know your accomplishments, own those accomplishments, which may not be something you're able to do right away, but own those accomplishments. Know that these are things you have done and you deserve what you have done. You deserve your own accomplishments. Everybody has things to be proud of, and you deserve those things. So you own those things. And when you go into the interview, act like you own them. Be like, yeah, man, I did this and it was cool, and I want to share it with you. I know I'm repeating myself, but I know that's really hard for a lot of people. So that's, I think it's worth repeating. Okay, so let's see. Prep, know yourself, know your accomplishments, know the company that you're applying for. Again, this might seem obvious, but um, you know, research the place you're applying for, or that if you got a recommendation, research the place you recommended for. And so, know some facts about it in general. Not that you're going to be quizzed on the facts, but if you can sprinkle that type of thing into the conversation, that can be a real sort of green flag for the interviewer. Like, yeah, this person knows their stuff. Like, they know what they're talking about. Particularly if the company has had anything in the media lately, like an initiative, or if they have something on the main page of their website, like a news item on the main page of their website, that means it's something that the company is wanting to share and they want people to notice. Um, and so, this sharing that, knowing that type of thing, seeing that type of thing, and maybe asking about it later, saying like, yeah, so I saw that, company was launching this major, tech initiative, and they're, I don't know, sending computers to elementary schools or something like that. Did this department have any stake in that initiative? Is there any sort of way that employees are contributing to that? And that way the interviewer might be like, yeah, actually, this department was the one that did the analytics to figure out how much that would cost, stuff like that. And so then you get like, oh wow, this person is paying attention, right? Yeah. Um, this is my biggest problem. I cringe at saying nice things about myself. Yeah, yeah, that's hard for a lot of folks. It's not just you. It used to be hard for me as well. And the only thing that makes it better is practice. Just knowing, like, hell yeah, I'm a badass. I have done badass things, and I deserve good things to come to me. And yeah, that's hard. Piece of shoot says interviews are conversations. Don't do monologues. Yes. Um, treat others. Let's see. Wait, hang on. A tip: when I interview people, I hated when they just repeated what they had on their CV. Yeah, that's why I say know your own accomplishments. So don't just, like, know what's on your resume, but know what it actually do. Like in those bullet points. That's why you pull it apart. You talk with someone else. You pull apart each of those bullet points that's on your resume, and you say like, yeah, okay, but sure, I collaborated with mixed teams in many departments to facilitate infrastructure or whatever. I don't know. Whatever your bullet point says. Okay, what did you actually do? What were the projects that you did? What types of people did you collaborate with? What challenges did you face? That kind of thing. Like, know what's inside of those bullet points. Yeah. Kalaris, there's no check-in, but I appreciate that. I appreciate the effort. I went to an interview with a recruiter and was having a hard time answering when they asked me what 100 devs is. Put 100 devs as a working experience, but it is a program. Well, I would say it's both, right? Because what did you do? You got a freelance client or you volunteered, and that was directly associated with 100 devs. I would say it's like an agency, right? So you're learning, and then 100 devs is helping you find work opportunities. So it's a work slash learning type of environment. um, and we've done group projects, and we've done, we did the freelance thing. We've done group projects. We've done, all sorts of different myriad of things inside of 100 Devs itself. Yeah, it's a piece of shoot. Exactly. It's an agency with a training program. Exactly. Oh, good, nerd girl, and welcome, by the way. You feel like you're being pretentious. In what way, Tucker? Software development with a training portion to help advance our skills. Sure. However you're comfortable describing. It's more about how you're comfortable describing it. Because if you're like nervous or weird about describing it, then that's going to be, the interviewer's going to be like, wait, are they lying? Like, what's the deal? So, however you're comfortable describing it, I think that's the way you should describe it. But yeah, Leanne generally calls it an agency. So there you go. After the, yeah. Calaris, yeah. You are here indeed, Calaris. You missed the check-in. Yeah. Yeah, so those are the general, so the two, if I had to boil it down, the two things I would say that are most important to prepping for an interview are to know yourself and know your accomplishments and know the company. Those are the two things. And by know, I mean not just, memorizing what's on your resume, not just memorizing what the company does, but knowing, your accomplishments and knowing the company's accomplishments as well can get you very far. Yeah. It's a numbers game and practice makes perfect. You can hop in the voice channels on Discord to practice. There's always helpful peeps there. Indeed. Yeah. If you say, hey, I want to, practice some interview questions, there'll be people jumping to help, especially as long as you say that you'll help them back. It's got to be a reciprocal thing. Just don't just go in there and be like, hey, help me. Somebody interview me now. Go in there and be like, look, anybody want to run questions with me? We'll do them back and forth. When I talk about my accomplishments, sometimes my mentor had to talk me into telling people I have a law degree. Feels braggy, even though it's extremely helpful. Not do you have a law degree, Tucker? Yeah, that's rad. That's freaking amazing. Talk about that law degree. Yeah. 100 devs. It's like a cult, but nice and wholesome. Indeed, the best kind. Yeah, that's so cool, Tucker. Yeah, absolutely talk about that. Okay, so that was my extremely long preamble. I spent like 25 minutes on that. So, whew. But I felt like it's worth saying because when I talk to people, I've talked to a lot of people in 100 devs on the Discord, coffee chats, that kind of thing. And that's the type of things that comes up most often is people will come to me and they'll just casually drop something awesome like that they've done, or there's something super friggin' amazing about their history, and they talk about it like it's nothing. And they're like, oh, I'm not even sure if I should mention that. Yeah, hells yeah, mention that. It's friggin' rad. And so, yeah, just, practice, 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 and learn how to talk about yourself in a positive way. And that'll help you in regular life as well. Learning to be proud of yourself. It's a self-fulfilling feedback loop. Thanks, Rufio. Thanks for stopping in. I always love to see you. I hope you can stick around a little bit. Pretty much what your mentor said. Yeah. Okay, so I spent probably way too long talking about that stuff, but let's go ahead and get into some actual questions, shall we? All right. So the way I'm going to give you a little bit more introduction. The way I'm going to try to answer these questions as if I was not already a developer. So I'm sure everybody already knows and they're tired of hearing it, but I'm currently employed as a developer. I'm a back-end developer, but this is my first actual role as a developer. Prior to this, I was a data analyst basically for my entire career, except for okay. I was a data analyst for half of my career, and then the other half I was an operations manager for like a light manufacturing facility. So very weird, janky work history. So I'm going to try to answer these questions as if I had no developer experience, using only only projects and things I did in non-developer roles, in my roles as a data analyst and in my roles as an operations manager, to show you that it is perfectly possible to answer these questions without having developer experience. So, thanks, Chris. Rufy, I'm so glad you're able to hang out a little bit. That's awesome. Piece of two. How long has it been since I started working in tech? So I only started working as a developer last October. Prior to that, like I said, I was a data analyst. And prior to that, I was an operations manager. And then prior to that, I was like a, entry level data analyst. So yeah, I've only been working as a literal developer for, less than a year. Yeah. Only about, what is it? Like 8 months. Yeah. So, but the important thing is you wouldn't have known unless I told you, right? Because I own it. I'm a developer, man. Hey, you're coming for operations as well? That's awesome, line hair. Yeah. Operations is rad. I really would have enjoyed, I really did enjoy working as an operations manager. Just the company was pretty terrible and the environment was ruining my mental health. But other than that, it was fun as hell. Yeah, see, so Florence and Floyd, yeah. So that's the crucial part is you gotta own where you are, right? I'm a developer, so I own it. It doesn't matter how long I've been one. It just matters that I am one. So yeah. Okay. So, but I'm gonna answer the questions as if I wasn't. All right. So the first question here is I'm gonna highlight it so it's easy to spot for folks if they just as they come in. Highlights. We'll highlight it as orange. There we go. Um, okay, give me an example of a project or initiative that you started on your own. It can be a non-business one. What prompted you to get started? Okay, so I have a good one for this, I think. So, in my role as a data analyst, some of the things that I had to do was some pretty low level, just like data entry works. That was part of it. That wasn't the whole job, um, but some of it was like pretty like basically the user would submit requests to make changes to data. I would go in and I would look at the list of requests and I would take these requests and enter them into the system kind of in a manual way. Well, the way that the requests were handled was through a SharePoint site. And it was a SharePoint 2013 site. And I don't know how familiar you all are with SharePoint, but it was hot garbage. So, and it was very frustrating to use. And it had been coded by somebody who was no longer, like associated with the group. And so nobody knew exactly how it was built. And so I decided I got to the point where I felt like I was losing so many man hours to this terrible SharePoint site that I decided, hey, I'm going to build an entirely new solution to make this process much easier for both me and for the users. Real Scott, I use SharePoint 5 days a week. Hot garbage, indeed. But one thing I did find is that my employer had access to SharePoint Online, which is the new cloud-based version of SharePoint. It's still SharePoint, but it's actually much improved. And so I decided I was going to teach myself. I'd never done this before. I decided I was going to teach myself how to build a SharePoint site from scratch, and that would do all the same things except much more in a much more user-friendly way for both me and for the users. And so I did that. I started from the ground up. I started from scratch, and I taught myself how to build forms, how to build Microsoft Forms, how to build a SharePoint site using the sort of the site builder, which is very similar to something like it's almost similar to WordPress, where you add sections. It's very it's a GUI, and you add sections and you add certain components and you arrange them on the page. So I built the SharePoint site, I built the forms that the users fill out, and then I had to figure out how to link those forms together. And in order to do that, I found out that my employer also has access to Microsoft Power Automate, which is not a coding tool, but it uses something similar to coding logic. And it's a visual coding tool, essentially. You drag in components that perform certain actions, and you put them in the appropriate sequence to deliver an appropriate result. And so I essentially automated the form submission process so that it would take in user inputs, run them through a process, put the user inputs in appropriate fields on the SharePoint site, and turn them into a useful list that had all the components that I needed in order to get this data and enter it into the system where I needed to enter it. So it didn't take away the manual data entry, which was perpetual. However, it reduced the number of man hours that both I and the users needed to expend in order to even get the data in the first place. Yeah, so that was a project that I started on my own, and what prompted me to get started was pure frustration and knowing that man hours were being wasted unnecessarily. And that SharePoint site is still being used today, with only minor modifications needed here and there as fields and things change. So that's how I would answer that question. $2 company consumer tool replaced. Yeah. So that's how I would answer that question. And what that shows is that, I was able to spot a problem. I was able to see that it was costing the company money, even though my main thing was that I was really frustrated with it, that it was costing me like my sanity. But I spun it to say, like, look, I can see that, this is wasting company hours and company time. And so, of course, I want to save the company money and time. So, I'm going to fix it. So I did. And it also shows that I was able to, bring multiple components together. I was able to research. I was able to learn, start from scratch, do a crap ton of Googling, and bring multiple components together and deliver a finished result that was not only useful, it was enduring, and it's still being used today. So that's how I would answer that question. And I didn't write. There was a little bit of a code component to it, which we'll actually, I'm actually going to save, and we'll touch on that in a future question. But I didn't actually have to do any coding. It was a non-coding solution. It was all GUI. Yeah. So that's how I would answer it. Does anybody want to? I guess here's where I'm going to turn it over to you guys. Does anybody want to maybe share their experience or their questions about this question, how, if you're struggling with how you might answer it, we can maybe workshop that a little bit. Or if you're like, nope, I feel like, that was good, I get it, we can move on to the next one. I'm gonna toss it over to you guys here. Like Leon said, if we have a paid client volunteer, we are already developers. Absolutely, you are. You are developing things, so therefore you are developers. Absolutely. So what do we think? Does anybody want help with this question? Anybody, not sure how to frame their own experiences in order to answer this question? And notice too, this question also says it can be a non-business. So if you have a project, in your personal life or in your volunteer life, that you could use to maybe, answer this question. Yeah, Floyd, I guess our 100 hours project will be the best answer to this question for most of us. Yeah, it could be. It could be. It doesn't have to be. Don't think it has to be. But Carpe, can't you get by? So this is an interesting question. Can't you get by making making up something that puts you in the best light as long as you have enough passion behind it? You could. I'm not saying don't. But note that could come back to bite you if they try to have you expand on that, or if you accidentally contradict yourself later in a later question. So if you're gonna make something up, you better have it down pat. And if you're gonna work that hard on having something down pat and making something up, then you might as well try to mine your own history and come up with something that's real. And so that way you're not likely to accidentally put your foot in your mouth later. Again, I'm not saying don't. It's your interview. You do what you want with it, but just be careful. Yeah, Colaris. I think what was important is that you save the company money. Ding, that was point one. And I self-learned to solve a big issue. Yes, exactly. So it shows that, number one, I care about the company, even if I really only care about myself. I said I cared about the company. I changed the motives a little bit, so I didn't change what I did. I maybe changed the motivation a little bit. Instead of saying, like, look, I was friggin' pissed with this stupid SharePoint site, and it was driving me up the wall, and it made me so mad that I decided I was going to build my own SharePoint site. Instead, I said, look, I saw a challenge for the company. I saw it was costing the company time and money, and I decided to fix it. Yeah. And it shows also that, yeah, it took the initiative to self-learn. Absolutely. So sometimes it's not about making something up. Maybe it's just about changing the motives, or, making it so that you're focused on, that it was like you were focused on the company's needs the entire time. That you had the company focus, or that you had the team focus. So yeah, you can absolutely, yes, piece of shit, you can absolutely embellish. You are telling a story, but I think it should still be based around truth at its core. Because, just coming up with a, with a fairy tale, is a lot harder than taking something real and maybe, putting some glitter and streamers on it, right? You can absolutely put glitter and streamers on your accomplishment. That's totally fine. Um, but just be careful with, complete fabrications. Okay, so let's move on to the second question. Tell me about a time you had to work on several projects at once. I'm going to unhighlight this. Hang on. Done. Oops. Tell me about a time you had to work on several projects at once. How did you handle this? Okay, so yeah, several projects at once. So when I was an operations manager, this was a big thing. A lot of the time, we always had multiple things, multiple plates in the air, multiple plates spinning. Um, right? Yeah. So when I was an operations manager for this light manufacturing company, it was an e-commerce company. We always had a lot of things going on because the assembly lines never stopped. It was a 24/7 business. E-commerce is 24 hours a day. Orders are coming in, so nothing ever stops for nobody. And so you always had the regular business processes going, and potentially things going wrong, things breaking, and then you also have, the improvement projects that are happening at the same time. So whether that's a new software that's being deployed, or a new like floor logistics layout or something like that, you always had these things that were always trying to happen at the same time and potentially conflicting. And so the most important thing, to manage several projects at once, is to understand priority at all times. So what is the most important thing that I need to be focusing on right now? Because if you don't know the priority of all these actions, then you can easily get yourself, dug into a hole with something is that ultimately, is not that important, and more important things go by the wayside, and then all of a sudden you've missed a very important deadline. And so how do you find out priority? Well, how you find out priority is communicating with the teams that are involved. So whether that's maybe a developer team, maybe that's your management, maybe that's the folks on the floor who are actually doing the work. And so taking in all those different, that different input can help you establish priority, and then priority should drive the order in which you do your work. And so if somebody comes back to you and says, well, I felt like I should have been, you should have been focusing on me first. Well, you can say, look, here's how I set this priority. This makes logical sense. This is the order in which we're going to accomplish this. And so at the e-commerce company, for example, I always had my day-to-day work, making sure that orders got out the door on time. Then we were usually, deploying updates to our shipping application. And then I also managed a team of 6 or 7 people, and they always had, basically small special projects that they were working on. And so in general, I would, start the day as getting communication from people, seeing, all right, what's on the docket, and then communicating with those people to say, like, look, okay, today I'm going to focus on, this shipping app deployment has to get out because FedEx has changed their code, and so we really need to make sure that our shipping labels are routing to the right place and the orders get out the door. And then second, we have these, customer complaints about this one particular product, so I'm going to work with my special team next. And then third, I'm going to double check priorities and make sure that our regular orders are also getting out the door. And so, generally you're communicating, you're getting buy-in, and you're setting your priorities very clearly. So that's how I would manage several projects at once. Nene, yeah. So making a to-do list, that's fantastic for you personally. But what you want to emphasize when you're answering the question is how you're involving the other people that you work with. So making a to-do list is fine for you, and that's perfectly okay to say, but you're also going to want to say something about then how are you communicating that to-do list to others? Because you could just have a to-do list and then people are like, what the heck are they working on? Like, they look very organized, but I don't know what they're doing, and I don't understand why they're not doing my thing. Um, and so, saying like, yes, I'm a good communicator. I can be firm. I can set priorities, and I can interface well with others. That's what that answer tells you. Or that's what the answer tells the interviewer. Yeah. That's a great start, Nene. Yeah. Kuhit says, I moved to Mastodon from Twitter in 2016. And didn't like the main communities I kept finding. I decided to learn how to build and host my own Mastodon instance to add my own features and have more control over the process. I spent a lot of time learning how to work with Git and cloud servers to host and run my own instance, and people are still joining 5 years later. Wow, that is totally cool. That's so cool. Yeah, and the way you phrase it is really great. The way you phrase it sounds really impressive, and that's absolutely something to be proud of and speak proudly of, when you're answering these types of questions in an interview. Absolutely. That's so cool. Focusing on the money saved in an interview is not always the right way to go. If you're interested in interviewing with a technical manager, it's not that important. Yeah, do know your audience as well. Yeah, so if you're interviewing with like a more middle manager type of person, they might be more focused on the money. But in if you're interviewing with more like a just a coding, like a, I don't know, a coding manager or something like that, then you can maybe focus on the man hours saved, like the time saved. To say like, look, I freed up this time that was spent doing this just meaningless busy work, and allowing people to focus on things that were, more important and help move things forward rather than just churning. So yeah, that's a decent point. Give mine the CEO role. I don't want to be a CEO. Nope. I was actually asked that question in an interview for my current role. I was asked, would you be interested in, in a more managerial role, or do you want to stay more as an individual contributor? And I was honest. I said, I've been a manager in the past. In that e-commerce company that I worked for, I was a manager. I managed between 6 and 7 people. There was 7 people for a while, then six. And I loved my team. They were fantastic people. Um, but I felt like I was doing, a lot of, people managing. And when I really wanted to be doing, I really wanted to be learning, and I wanted to be getting my hands dirty, and I wanted to be actually physically doing the work, and building myself up, building up my skills. And so, at least at this point in my career, I'm not really interested in being a manager of people. I'm interested in learning, getting my hands dirty, growing my skills, so that maybe someday I can be that type of informed manager that is, the type of manager that understands what their employees are doing and can help facilitate that work better than someone who just comes in from a people manager role and doesn't know what the heck is going on. So that's essentially how I answer that question, saying, rather than just saying, heck no, I don't want to be a manager, it's too stressful. That's how I answered that question instead. I thought you said Macedon and got excited. That was one of the companies you wanted. Oh, cool. I've had people be like, yo, let's make a startup. And I was like, no, that sounds awful. Yeah, startups are not for everybody. Some people really love wearing like 16 hats, right? And like just, diving in face first. Um, I like, you know, I like sort of regular work and job security personally. I like managing things, not people. Yeah. You might say that you might want to avoid saying like that you don't like people, like that's kind of what it sounds like. So trying to phrase it as a positive rather than in using words like I don't like this or I don't like that. You can always say that I prefer such and such, or I really enjoy, or I'm choosing to focus on such and such, rather than focusing on saying what you don't like. Say what you really like and want to focus on. Answer so much better than hell no. Yeah. I require too much consistency for startups. Yeah, me too. Consistency is good. You like consistency. Yeah. It makes you feel like, you have you know what to expect, you have rules. And that's not, some people like chaos. I'm not saying that chaos is bad. I'm just saying that's not my personal vibe. Yeah. Some people thrive on chaos and I admire those people, but I am not one of them. Johnny, if you want to form a startup and chase that VC money, I wish you luck. I will be watching from the bleachers. You fiery ammo GIF. Yeah. I know exactly which one you're talking about. Uh, Real Scunny, I will applaud you. Yeah, I won't be involved though. Okay. So you got a little bonus answer there about the people management. It wasn't actually the question, but I'm all about them bonus points. So because I love you guys. All right. Um let's go on to the next one here. Okay. Describe a situation in which you felt you had not communicated well enough. What did you do and how did you handle it? Oh, I got a good one for this. So, another important thing is knowing your accomplishments, but also being able to talk about your failures in a constructive way. I'm emphasizing constructive here because I feel like a lot of folks, you know what you've done wrong, and it could be one of those things that keeps you up at night. And all the times you screwed up, and it's like, oh god, I really I effed that up so bad, and I sucked, and oh my god, everybody was so mad at me, or oh, that was the worst. But learn how to analyze that failure and turn it into at least be able to, you don't have to feel this way about it, but at least be able to speak about it in a constructive and positive way. So here's mine. So I think it was my very first week as a data analyst. When I first started working for Purdue University, I was put on this team and I was really excited. And I was kind of like, I just come out of my operations manager role and I was going back to this data analyst role, and so it was kind of like a big mental shift for me. And I was really excited and I really wanted to do well, and I was just like, eager puppy, just like, yes, give me a project, give me something cool to do, and I will impress you. I will be the bestest data analyst in the whole wide world. And so, my manager was great. She sat me down and she walked me through. Basically, she wanted me to gather up a bunch of data and like compile it and turn it into and turn it into a giant Excel workbook and do some analysis on it, and analyze some trends in the data. And so it was really hard. It was a ton of data, and I dove right into it, and it was really confusing, but I didn't feel like I wanted to ask questions because I wanted to be like, oh yeah, I got this, I understand everything. I don't got to ask any questions. I'm it's my first week, but I know everything already, being stupid like that. That's really stupid. But that's not how I would answer this question. I wouldn't say I was stupid, but I would basically just say like, look, my manager sat me down, and they gave me a project, and I really wanted to, this is my answer. So my manager sat me down and gave me a project, and I really wanted to be gung-ho and dive in. And so, I was given a bunch of data, and I was reluctant to ask questions, not because not because I didn't like my manager or didn't think my manager would answer them, but I was just so eager to impress. And I realized, and I didn't communicate. I didn't say like, hey, I'm not 100% sure on the requirements here. I'm not 100% sure that I have the right data. Instead, what I wanted to do was just deliver a beautiful finished project, and everybody was going to be so impressed that I had just picked it up so flawlessly. And so I did. I put together a finished product, and I scheduled a meeting with my manager, and we went into a room and we sat down and I started to present, and her face just kind of went like deer in the headlights, like what? And I kept talking, and I could see that it just really wasn't landing. And I'd spent like a couple weeks on this, and I was getting more and more nervous as I talked. And finally, I just stopped and I said, is this, what do you think? Is this what you're looking for? And she essentially just said, nope. here's actually, that's not really what I wanted you to do. And then she basically said, look, here's what I was looking for instead. Um, and she said, I actually I wanted this data and I wanted it arranged this way. And, so she shared with me what she'd actually wanted, which is not what I delivered. I was mortified by this, that I had essentially, my lack of communication meant that I had done a bunch of extra work, that didn't provide value, and didn't really, teach me, the techniques to find what they were actually looking for. Um, and so what I did then was I sat with her and I listened and I took notes on what she actually wanted. And then how I handled it was that I then said, okay, I took a minute to compose myself because I was pretty, mortified. And I said, okay, um, here's how, here's what I've learned from this experience. I said, I was honest with her. I said, I know I didn't do what you wanted, but here's how I'm going to rectify that in the future so this doesn't ever happen again. And I told her, how I would communicate with her better going forward, how I would check in if I had questions, um, and how I would keep those lines of communication open, and how she should be feel free to tell me if I come to her with something that doesn't look right, feel free to tell me and I will correct it. And so we had an honest back and forth communication, and we really laid down the groundwork for a much better system of communication in the future, and we kept that going. And so that helped prevent any sort of incident like that from ever happening again. Yeah, so that's a great point, piece of shoot. Yes, so I kept the ball in my court. I didn't say, "Well, manager, you didn't check up on me, so it was your fault that I didn't get the right data at the right times." Even though, yeah, she probably could have. She probably could have, checked in on me maybe a little bit more. Maybe said, "Hey, can I see what you've got so far? And let's just take a look at this together and make sure that you're on the right track." Yeah, she could have done that, but but again, in an interview like this, the focus should be on you. Should be on you, the person that's being interviewed, not anybody else, but you. Um, and so framing the answer to this question, it's really important to say, like, look, here's what I did. Here's how I handled it, and here's the situation, here's what I did, and here's how I handled it. And the impetus, the motion, the onus should be on you. Um, yeah, so that was my failure, and that's how I handled it. But yeah, but I talked about that failure in a constructive way, and then the end result of that um, misstep, should always, the way you spin it should always then be, all right, here's what was gained out of that, here's what I gained out of that, and here's how I came out of that a better person, or a wiser person, maybe not better, but a wiser person, a better communicator in the future. So any questions about this one? Yeah, I love bringing that in as an answer because I that's like the most mortified I've ever been in a professional setting, and so of course I'm going to talk about it. It was super embarrassing. And so own your successes and own your failures as well. Yeah, sure, I screwed up, but um, in the end I'm better for it, so it doesn't matter. It also, that'll, the more you talk about it, the less it keeps you up at night. Yeah, exactly. But so it would never happen again. Yeah, that's also good. Everyone makes mistakes. You just try to avoid making the same ones multiple times. Yeah, exactly. Yep. How, if you can frame it like, look, here's what I did to make sure that this was, maybe so that it, you know, just to say like, look, this is not, so this would not repeat itself. Here's how I, fix this, communication problem so that it was, you know, resolved for the future. Yeah, everyone has had a moment of failed communication. Absolutely. Moral of the story, indeed. Okay, go on to the next one. And we'll do one more and then we'll take a break. Okay, so tell me about when you had to deal with conflict within your team. How was the conflict solved? How did you handle that? How would you deal with it now? Um, yeah, so I've actually been, I mean, I've been pretty fortunate on my teams that I've worked on in the past that, we worked pretty well together. However, there was a time, when I was a people manager. And so with managing a team of people, there is always inevitably going to be conflict. The goal is to, work through those conflicts to make sure that everybody feels heard in those conflict situations. And then to, try to come to a conclusion that, is amicable for all parties involved. Maybe not everybody is perfectly 100% happy. That's probably never going to happen. But you want to come to a solution that still allows everybody to, work together comfortably and feel like they are heard and supported going forward into the future. So yeah, when I was a people manager, we had one member of the team who was fairly young. They were really motivated when they wanted to be. Um, However, there were some times when they did not want to be motivated, and they would literally just kind of sit on the desk in the team area and just kind of like sneak glances at their phone and not really do anything. However, it was difficult because then there were other times when this person was like zipping around and just given the 110%. So it was really an on or off type situation. And the other team members who were maybe more steady in their work levels, sometimes took issue with this. They would be like, look, this person they're just sitting there. Like, we need help. And they're just sitting there. And so how do we, this is ridiculous. And why is this person just sitting there? And so, like I said, what's important is that number one, everybody needs to feel heard. And so I talked to, the team members. I did have fairly regular one-on-ones with these team members. And so we would talk about, privately about anything that they wanted to talk about, listen to them, their accomplishments and their struggles. And so, I was able to talk with each team member privately. And then I talked to the person that was kind of at issue here. And they mentioned some personal struggles that they had been having in their life, that were causing these kind of differences in motivation and differences in mood. But I kind of figured out what would motivate them in a professional setting, regardless of what was going on in their life. That's important, and it's important to know that that's a component in their head. But while they're at work, what is going to drive them? What's going to motivate them? And so, what I ended up doing was creating some sort of group incentives that the team could all work toward together. So on certain days when things were really swamped and the team really needed to pull together, we had these, we would go over what the goals were for the day. So everybody heard all the goals at once. Like, all right, we're going to get, these crucial orders out. And then we have some stretch goals here. If we can get these orders out too, that's going to make sure that, if we can get these orders out and kind of schedule these things the way they are, then maybe, everybody can either go home if they would like to go home, or get a little bit of extra overtime by helping out on some other departments later on in the week. And that goal of either maybe leaving a little bit early or getting some extra money through overtime helps motivate everyone on the team, because everybody had slightly different motivations. Some people wanted money from overtime, and some people, including the employee that tended to kind of sit around, they wanted to go home early. And so giving them that choice and giving them that option, saying like, look, if we pull together right now and we get all these things done, then this is your reward. This is what you can have. And so, I want to see you all work together, and we can accomplish this together, and you will be rewarded. And so that's what we ended up doing. And for most of the time, that worked. Nothing's ever going to work 100% of the time. Everybody's going to have bad days. But most of the time, just making sure everybody felt heard, and then understanding what drove people and understanding what they wanted, what their motivations were, what they were working toward. That allowed me to set goals that essentially helped benefit everybody on the team. So yeah, that's how I dealt with conflicts when I was a people manager. How would I deal with it now? Well, not being a people manager, puts you in a slightly different role. you don't have that direct leadership over the other people on your team. You are, you're a collaborator instead of a leader of the people on the team. However, I think um, some of the approaches can still be very similar. So now, as a collaborator with other people on the team, I still want to make sure that I'm hearing. If there's conflict, I want to make sure that I'm really hearing what other people are saying, and listening to what is the actual conflict. It's not just so and so is mad and so. Why? Like what's the real underlying issue here? And then maybe it's if I'm in conflict with somebody else, I should be talking to that person directly and being like, look, I really want to understand more about where you're coming from and what the issue might be here. If it's two other people on the team that are in conflict that might be, impeding other people's work, then I should probably talk to my manager, not just say like, solve this, but say like, look, here's what I know. I think there may be an issue here. And here's my level of knowledge about the issue. And I really think maybe you should, reach out to these folks and see what might be going on here. So it's about, knowing your sphere of influence, knowing how far you should insert yourself into a situation, and that depends on your role. So yeah, how I would handle things as a people manager is different than how I would handle things as a collaborator. But yeah, that's how I would answer that question. Yeah, Peter. So yeah, I didn't write these questions. They're really great questions. But these are from the 100 Devs bank of questions. Indeed, bangers only. Indeed. Yeah. So any questions about that conflict question or about my answer? And will I say would I say that I was the best manager, the best people manager? No, I didn't have the appropriate training. Um, but it's important that you phrase your answers in a positive way. And so that was one of the things that I did well in this particular case. Hey Raiders, what? Welcome. CM Griffin, thank you so much for the raid. That's totally rad. Thanks for coming in. We are practicing interview questions today, folks. We are going through and we are learning how to answer interview questions when maybe you don't have a ton of tech experience. How do we answer behavioral interview questions with, from a non-tech perspective, and still feel comfortable in our answers and feel comfortable with, owning our accomplishments and understanding how our accomplishments and our failures can benefit us in a positive way going forward. So it's great to see you all. So many first timers. Hello. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Yes, we are having a good time tonight, folks, and it's great to see you all. Making sure I didn't miss anything here. Ikechi, hey, good to see ya. Oh, thank you for the follows, folks. Always love seeing you. Thank you for the raid. What were y'all working on tonight? Oh, yeah, found a new streamer. Yeah, absolutely. ID of Alan. Yes. So, my name is Mayan Wolf, and I am a member of the 100 Devs cohort. So we are learning full stack web development with Leon, !Leon in the chat if you want to learn more. And I stream twice a week, and we do a variety of projects. Normally, I tend to focus on technical projects. So we do a variety of things. We do JavaScript, we do full stack, we do database stuff, we do apps, whatever strikes our fancy. We build games. It's just, whatever we feel like doing, we will do it, and we will have fun doing it. My streams are educational. Focusing on learning new skills, full stack skills. So feel free to subscribe or feel free to follow. You don't have to subscribe. Feel free to follow if you would like. Also follow me on Twitter, !Twitter, if you would like my Twitter handle, where I will announce stream topics and schedule times. So yeah, great to see everybody here. We're actually just about to take a break because we like to be healthy. So I think we're going to take a 5-minute break, and I'm going to feed my dogs, and then we will keep going through interview questions. Yes. So, but yes, great to see you all here, and I hope you're doing something fun on CM Griffin's stream. Happy dog is incoming indeed. Yes. Floyd, Floyd asks, are you answering these questions off the top of your head? Yes, I am. I mean, obviously I've read through them, but I haven't memorized answers. And before we go on break, last thing I want to say, so this is the way that I approach answering these types of questions. I know my, like I said, I know my accomplishments. I know my failures. I know some general talking points that I want to hit. Like I know major projects that I've done or things I'm proud of, but I don't memorize word for word my answers to these questions. If you memorize the answers like word for word, you tend to sound kind of robotic and like you're reading off of a piece of paper. Um, and so I feel like it's important. You need to have a little bit of extemporaneous delivery to say like, look, to kind of that allows you to kind of play off the interviewer a little bit and kind of go off of maybe what you think they want to hear or what their vibe is. If they want to, if they're a little bit easygoing, maybe you want to throw in a joke or be a little bit more flippant, or a little sarcastic in your delivery. If they're more straight laced, then obviously you don't want to do that. And so being flexible with your answers allows you to be flexible with your delivery and sound more honest and like you're really considering and coming up with these sorts of answers just extemporaneously. Yeah. Oh, coding some Angular stuff. Oh, that's cool. Yeah. Rufio. Yeah, we got a raid from CM Griffin. Yeah. Oh, thanks. Teamwork indeed. Hey, Frantech, I'm not sure I fully understand your question. Can you ask again? Okay, well, let's go ahead and take a break, 5 minutes, and then we'll come back. Feel free to ask questions while I'm gone. I will come, I'll scroll through the chat when I get back. Rufio, just step away and we'll get to 300. Yeah. Yeah, so feel free to ask questions in the chat while we're on break. For now, let's be healthy and hydrate and feed dogs and whatever else you got to do for 5 minutes. So, all right, 5 minute timer. Breaks are worth it indeed. You are correct. Yes. All right, I'm going to reset it here. Hang on. We'll make it nice and big. I'm going to leave the questions up so you can read through the questions if you would like to do so while we are on break. But I will see you back in 5, okay? See you soon. All right, folks, we got about a minute left, so start coming on back. If you're coming back, look forward to seeing you in just about 1 minute. Righto-roni, I'm going to stop the timer so that it doesn't beep in our faces. And let's get back to it. Okay. Um, so let's see. We just got done with this question here. I'm going to get my webcam back on. And so just looking back through the chat here. Yeah, so there's a great question there about length of answers. Yeah. I really like this discussion because, yeah, length of answers. And that's partially, so that can partially depend on, again, cueing off of your interviewer. So while you're answering, if you can kind of look at how your interviewer is reacting. Are they engaged? Are they interested in your answer? Do they look like, oh, that, are they kind of like, yeah, that's actually interesting. Are they do they look like they're really engaged, or are they just sitting there like, ugh? Are their eyes glazing over? Are they looking at their watch, looking a little like, come on, wrap it up, wrap it up. Then, that can kind of guide your length of answer. If you make all of your answers super short, then that can sound really sort of like you are like you like just memorized everything and you're just reading off of an internal sort of like checklist, right? That you don't really, you haven't really thought about the answer. You're just queuing off of, question one, answer 1A, and that sounds like you don't really maybe care about the actual material, that you just memorized it and you're just spooling off answers. And so I like to, maybe have a longer, a lot of stuff I could talk about, but then I can shorten it if the interviewer is seeming a little bit impatient or wanting me to, chop. And also too, when I'm answering questions in this type of setting, I don't have anybody to cue off of, so I'm just going to talk. I'm going to just talk for as long as I want to talk. But if you can come up with a long form answer, then all you got to do is just shorten it down when you're actually in an interview. So shortening it down, I think, is easier than trying to elongate an answer that doesn't have a lot of substance. Yeah. So that's just my opinion. But if you want to, if you want to keep things short and sweet, if that's your style, then that's fine. Stick with your style. Do you. Okay. Oh, this next question is a really good one. Um, Give me an example of a time. Open this too. There we go. Get rid of that distraction in the timer. Um, Give me an example of a time when you had to take a creative and unusual approach to solve a coding problem. How did this idea come to your mind? Why do you think it was unusual? Um, yeah, so this is an interesting question to answer. Trying to answer it from a perspective of not having a previous role as a developer, right? Because that's the part that I'm playing here. Like I said before, I'm currently employed as a developer, but I'm answering these questions as if I did not have that experience, as if I was in my roles before I was a developer. So before I was a developer, I was a data analyst. I was an operations manager for a light manufacturing facility, and I was essentially an actuarial analyst. Um, and so answering this question is a little bit more interesting without being able to actually talk about, developer experience itself. So let's see what we can come up with here. Oh, the idea of Alan. I've heard of public speakers who practice the same story at three different paces, e.g., 5 minutes, 15 minutes, 30 minutes. I wonder if something like that would work for interview questions. Yeah, that's actually a great idea. You could practice like the Cliff Notes version, where you tell I would suggest starting with the long story. Um, have this be able to really articulate and go into detail about what things you've done and answers to these types of questions, and then challenge yourself to condense that down into 3 to 5 sentences. And like I said, I think that's the way to go, is to start with a lot of the details and then compress it down into something smaller. But yeah, I like that. I like that, having the long form answer and then having the short form answer as well. I looked up to the heavens and the coding solution divined itself within me. Yeah. I didn't use Stack Overflow, very unusual. Yeah. Cause action result. Yep. Okay. So, all right. So I'm going to answer this going back to the example of the SharePoint site that I built. So the SharePoint site that I built, I mentioned that it mostly used like a GUI type interface to build it, so very visual. However, there was one thing I wasn't able to solve, and this was we wanted to allow people to upload spreadsheets along with these forms. So Microsoft Forms has an ability to attach spreadsheets, um, and people would upload spreadsheets of long lists of data. Um, and I had no idea how to get these spreadsheets to come off of the form and into SharePoint, um, and then have to save it to SharePoint and then have you be able to go to that save location. So how did I do that? Well, I discovered that within SharePoint there was a way that you could actually paste in a little bit of JSON. I did not know what JSON was at the time. However, I Googled and I used Google to find several similar solutions. I found the JSON that I needed to use, and I was able to copy and paste that JSON into the SharePoint editor window, and modify it slightly to meet the visual needs of the page. So I essentially played around with the settings and did multiple tests until I got something that looked the way that I wanted it and linked to the appropriate spreadsheet that was saved elsewhere on the site. How did this idea come to my mind? Well, it came to my mind through experimentation. So I essentially just explored all the settings that were available to me, and basically with the mindset that there has to be a way to do this, right? That people uploading spreadsheets is common enough that there has to be a way to be able to link to them once they're saved on the SharePoint site itself. Just so going in with a positive mindset, saying this is possible and I'm going to figure out how to do it, essentially led me to Googling until I found the appropriate solution, and then modifying that solution to meet my specific needs. Why do I think it was unusual? Well, I think it was unusual because using JSON to do this type of, it's not just formatting, but linking and sort of creating this really sort of unique formatting step inside of a SharePoint list, I think is not necessarily the first thing that people would think of. And I was surprised to find this setting, and I thought it was interesting the amount of flexibility that you can have using JSON inside of a SharePoint list. I think that's a really cool feature, and I was able to then, still without really knowing much about JSON itself, I was able to use that JSON formatting functionality to do several other types of formatting tricks in the future at other parts of the SharePoint site. And so that's how I would answer that question. Um, and then that also leaves a little bit of an open end, so that the interviewer could ask more about that if they wanted. They could ask, so you did more with JSON in the future. So what else did you do? They could answer that question, or they could let it drop, and that's up to them. That's their choice, and I'm kind of dangling that little matzo ball out there for them. So they could dig if they wanted, or they could just be like, yeah, that's cool, and move on. It's up to them. Got more I could say, but I'm gonna I'll leave it there. The heavens said, "Go forth and document and upload to GitHub." Yes, yes. Writing documentation would definitely be like a heavenly trait. The opposite of that would be just upload with no documentation. Well, there's EUA and then there's cause action results, like piece of shoot mentioned earlier. Yeah, there's several different methods you could use to answer these types of questions. Google saves the day every time. Yeah, and being able to Google is definitely it's a valuable skill. Being able to Google well and to actually find the information that you want. Being able to troubleshoot and being able to Google. Those are two things that are really valuable skills that maybe don't people don't necessarily think of as skills, but they absolutely are. And he said unto them, "Go forth and publish as open source." Indeed. Yeah. So yeah, being able to troubleshoot and being able to Google, those are valuable skills. And so yeah, if you can touch on those things when you're answering these questions as well, say like, look, here's how I leveraged Google to fill in the gaps of what I didn't know, and also here's how, you know, when I encountered a problem, here's kind of how I approached it in a logical way and troubleshooted it, and also here's how maybe I helped other people troubleshoot their problems. That can be a big one as well. They're like, look, people were having this problem. People came to me with such and such a problem, or here the team had a problem, and here's how I didn't know I didn't know how to solve this problem, but here's how I troubleshooted it, and here's how I found the answer. Those can be really good as well. So yeah, this was an interesting question with I was able to answer it in kind of a codey way, but before I knew what JSON was, I mean, yeah, I JSON, like, why is their code named after a person? Like, what the heck is that? But it didn't matter. The point is that it didn't matter that I didn't know everything about it. I wasn't afraid to use it to solve my problem. And then what I did, the important thing is that after I'd implemented it successfully, I went back and I learned more about it and I utilized it again in the future. So it was a growth opportunity, and that's how I presented it. Open source, yeah. All right, so questions about this question, or questions about how we might answer this question. And also too, I know there's some new folks here, so if anybody wants, if anybody's looking at these questions and not sure how to apply their personal experiences to answer these questions, if you're like, yeah, that's all well and good for you, but like, I don't know personally, I don't know how to answer these questions, then feel free to share your experiences in chat, and we can workshop how you might be able to answer some of these questions yourself. um, so yeah, if anybody, feel free to ask questions anytime while we go through these. I am happy to the best of my ability. I'm not Leon. I don't have a decade of experience helping people get jobs, but I can do my best to help. Okay. Oh, thanks, Rufio. Okay, so this is a great question. I like this next question because it's very similar to one we've already done. And so the challenge here is going to be, can I come up with a different answer? And that's not to say that you have to, because I doubt that you're going to be asked, all of these. You're not going to be asked all of these questions in a single interview. So you can leverage the same answer for multiple similar questions. That's perfectly fine. I'm going to challenge myself here a little bit and try to come up with a different answer than what I did before. So, all right, let me highlight this so we can see it. So I already answered a very similar question to this, saying when I had a project I worked diligently on, I screwed it up because of lack of communication, and I came up with the a result that was bad. And but then I showed how I learned from that and grew from that. So I'm not going to reuse that. I've already talked about that ad nauseum. So I'm going to try to come up with something different here. So describe a situation in which you worked diligently on a project and it did not produce the desired results. Why didn't you get the desired results? What did you learn from the experience? Yeah, okay. So I have one for this. So when I was an operations manager for a light manufacturing facility, essentially we were tasked with building a new shipping application for the people who work down on the production floor. And so the folks down on the production floor would essentially get finished packages, and then they would do a check on the QA check on the package. They would put it into a shipping bag, and they would hit some buttons on the screen with various settings, and out would come a shipping label. Stick the shipping label, send it on the conveyor belt. It goes out to ship. And so I was involved with designing the user interface for this application. And so I was working with the dev team. I was doing sort of technical tests on this user interface, and I was testing this user interface on my computer at my desk. My computer at my desk had a fairly large monitor. I had dual monitors. I had plenty of real estate on my screen, and I was doing, I was using a mouse to click the various buttons and test the flows and everything. And I felt that everything was going very well. And so we got to the point where we were ready to, like, I wasn't doing any coding here. I was really just doing user tests, right? And end user tests. And so we got to the point where we were pretty much ready to do a soft deployment, and we were ready to test with a group of actual like end users down on the floor. So we deployed this app out to a couple of the computers out on the floor, and we brought some trusted users in and to actually do some shipping tests. And I was really excited. I was like pumped. It's like, yes, they're gonna love it. It's so much better than the old app. It's great. So I let them, do their work for a while without me looking over their shoulder. And I went down to one of my favorite ladies down there on the floor. Her name was Miss Beverly. I said, Miss Beverly, how you feeling? Do you like the new app? And she said, oh, honey. I said, I can't use this. I'm sorry. And I said, what? What is the problem? And she said, well, just come look. And I went and looked. And the app on her shipping computer was pretty much unusable. The text was way too small. The buttons were too small for fingers. And the layout just did not look good. And why didn't I get the desired results? I didn't think, I was testing on my own computer. I didn't think about the actual computers that the users were using down on the floor. They were like 20 years old, super low resolution, super small screens. So of course, things are not going to look the same on my, 1080p big monitor that they do down on an old, 20-year-old CRT touchscreen. And so I didn't consider the end user experience. I only considered my experience when designing this user interface. And I didn't, run it by the actual end users. I didn't consider a touch screen interface, and I didn't consider the change in screen size and resolution when trying to design this app. So I didn't get the desired results because I didn't consider the needs of the actual end user over my own. And so what I learned from the experience was the next thing that I did is for every following iteration of the app, so we went right back to the whiteboarding, and we decided, all right, we're gonna design for a square screen that's way too old, and we're gonna rethink this user interface. So we increased all the font sizes, we increased the button sizes, we removed useless empty space, and for every subsequent iteration, I did all my testing on actual shipping computers down on the floor, and whenever it was appropriate, I brought in these end users to actually help me test and give their opinions. So what I learned from it is that you need to involve the actual machines that it's going to be running on, and you need to actually involve the end users in your testing. So that's what I learned from this experience as well. It worked on my computer. Yes, that's an exact example of it worked. Well, it works on my machine. Yeah, and that's a common trap that That's why I kind of decided to speak about this example, is that that's a common trap that devs can fall into, is that you do all the testing yourself and you're like, yeah, it's fine, pfft, deploy. And I think that's a something that a lot of devs can relate to. Even being in a non-developer role, I still managed to make that mistake. um, and that's such a common thing. It's saying like, look, no, you got to involve the end user, you got to involve the end user's hardware, and you got to make sure that it's actually going to work for them and not just for you. Let me check the potato antenna. Indeed, these computers were potatoes. Yeah, it was hardcore, man. They were all running like Windows XP, or even something. I don't remember. It might have been even something older. Might have been like Windows ME. I think it was Windows ME. Yeah, it was ridiculous, man. Production environment, like manufacturing environments, are something else as hardware and software. Needs more aluminum foil, absolutely. Yeah, it doesn't. It's obviously the client's fault. Yeah, right. Yep. Everybody who works in IT knows the feeling. But that's the point. Is that I wasn't in a developer role at the time, but I still had this experience that is relatable to a lot of devs. Um, and so also too, maybe even as you're preparing for these types of interviews, you could even hang out in like developer spaces. Maybe that's like, a subreddit that's like programmer focused, and learning some of their like patterns and their jokes, some of the things that they relate to, some of the common problems, and learning how to relate your own stories to those types of problems. So yeah, I didn't write a line of code for that app, but I still made a common mistake that a lot of developers make. Tell me about it. We still have a DOS machine. We recently got around to putting into a VM. Nice. Can't get away from it, but you sure as hell can virtualize it. Oh yeah, DOS is still around. Absolutely. Yep. A lot of manufacturing environments. It's if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And well, in fact, even if it is broke, just work around it, because you sure as hell can't afford to fix it because you can't afford the downtime. And nobody knows who wrote the code anyway. It was some dude who left the company 30 years ago. Yeah, and yep, responsive design isn't the only consideration. Hardware constraints are important, especially with older and smaller computers. Um, yeah, DOMs, JS, React, yeah. Yeah, it can slow things down a lot. Yep. I think a lot of the apps that were at this manufacturing facility were coded in like C or something. I don't even know. But yeah, they had to be really careful with the amount of memory usage and the uh, the strain that they put on these old computers. Yeah, working with designers and project managers is another problem that all have devs have. I wouldn't call it a problem. I would say it like a challenge, maybe, that all devs have. There's many stories to tell about making that work. Yeah. Love all these make do and mend type stories. Yeah. All right. So okay, give an example of an important project goal that you reached and how you achieved it. Problem is challenge. Yeah, yeah. Try to, if you can try to avoid like overtly negative language in your answers, or if there is something negative, instead of saying like I don't like, or I you know I wasn't able to, or um, those sort of negative, like negative absolute type terms, you can spin those into, I tried this and pivoted to this, or I appreciate this, or I enjoy this. Focusing on the things that, focusing on the positive outcomes or the positive directions of things can be a little better than using strictly negative language. Yeah. Okay, so give an example of an important project goal that you reached and how you achieved it. Yeah, it was a great learning experience, indeed. Yes. Okay, so again, I'm challenging myself here, and I'm going to try to I'm going to try to use a different, I'm going to try to focus on a different project and type of answer every single time. You don't have to do this. If you have, very few projects on your resume, or very few things that you're comfortable discussing, you can just get really intimately familiar with the components of what you've achieved and figure out how to kind of dissect it and spin it in different ways each time to meet the answers to these questions. So you do not have to do what I'm doing here. I'm just kind of challenging myself a little bit and showing how you can use a variety of experiences to answer these questions. However, if you, like I say, if you have very few things that you're able to talk about, or comfortable talking about, then just figure out how to slice and dice it in a way that meets the requirements of the question, and gives you a satisfying answer. So that's my little disclaimer here. So an important project goal that I reached. So when I was a data analyst, I was given the daunting task of essentially projecting tuition and fee revenue for the university as a whole. And this was to allow for better financial projections. So if you know how much tuition and fee revenue you have coming in, you can essentially tell the university how much budget they have to play with for the next several years. And that, as a projection, universities are always thinking multiple years into the future, because that's a lot of these projects are longer scale, like new buildings or new academic initiatives, that kind of thing. Those are long-term projects, so you need to be able to plan ahead in order to initialize those and make sure you have the money for them. So I was given the task of projecting the university's tuition and fee revenue for essentially 10 years into the future. And so that goal essentially was, we started with really nothing. We started with an idea of what the fees and the tuition amounts were, but then we needed to build a framework in order to essentially set up this model. And so how did I achieve it? Well, the most important thing for me in order to achieve it was to first understand what I was working with. And so I started out by reaching out to multiple departments. I started out by reaching out to the bursar department to make sure that I had all of the information to start with. I didn't want to make the same mistake that I had done before of jumping off with and trying to run with bad data. So I really did my groundwork. I reached out to multiple departments, interfaced with them, got their buy-in, got their information, and then started out building this model. And then during the course of building the model, I worked with other folks on the team who had more experience with this long-term modeling, and I got their input, what they liked, what they didn't like, mistakes they had made in the past. And then essentially was able to deliver this 10-year projection. And in our first year, the model was accurate within a few $100,000 of that first year projection. So the first year projection was accurate to within like a couple $100,000, which for a almost $1 billion of tuition revenue, that's pretty damn good. And so I would say that was a major goal, to reach that level of accuracy so quickly. And so once we had reached that level of accuracy that quickly, we were able to then refine the model even further to contain more components. And achieving that first goal really allowed us to get buy-in with more departments who saw how cool this was and how impressive it was. And then they wanted to contribute more information to the model to make it even better. And so achieving that first goal then set us up better achieve further goals going further and set some more stretch initiatives. Yeah, so the main ways I achieved this goal were doing good groundwork, setting up a good foundation, and then collaborating with others who had maybe more prior knowledge of this type of modeling as I went, to make sure that I was building strong scaffolding on top of this foundation. What year was this? This was, my sense of time is all messed up. 2018-ish, I would say. Yeah. 2018, 2019. Yeah, 2018. Yeah, it was pre-pandemic, definitely. That was back when I still worked in an office. That's weird. Still worked in an office with cubes, and I had to wear like nice clothes and stuff. It was weird, man. Stephen. Okay, but do you know Fortran? I do not. I'm actually very new to coding itself. Um, I have only ever used SQL throughout my career in various capacities, and I'm only just now learning anything else besides SQL. You think the model held in 2020? Well, that's the cool thing about the model is that it didn't, but we were able to modify it so that it took into account um, refunds and that types of things, the types of initiatives that the university did. We were able, the original model held firm and was robust enough that we were able to then add modifications on top to say like, yeah, okay, here's the base, and then we take into these refunds that were given to students and COVID incentives and that. You're a COBOL kind of gal. That's awesome. Yeah, COBOL still has a huge place in the industry, especially in banking and finance. Yeah, a lot of banks still run on COBOL. Can't you be a database administrator with SQL? You can, yes. Um, I'm currently a senior developer with SQL. I enjoy my job. I don't, I don't know that I would want to be a database administrator per se. I kind of like being down in the trenches and building stuff versus just administering the database and making sure that people don't screw up the database. But yeah, you can definitely be a DBA with SQL. Being able to work in sweatpants and a standard tee, yeah, I'm wearing t-shirts every day, baby. In my Microsoft shop, yeah, we use. So we don't use SQL Server. I mean, we use like Microsoft for like Office for like our all of our collaborative platforms and everything. But we use Oracle for our actual database solution, PL SQL. You wear pants. My team doesn't even usually use cameras when we have meetings. So I mean, pants are optional. I am wearing pants now. I mean, be transparent there. For my SQL position, how much of the interview was database theory and practical SQL usage? It was really like the most of, so that's why I'm focusing on behavioral questions tonight, because for my developer interview, most of it was behavioral. What they were really interested in was me them being able to train me in the way that they did things. So I mean, they appreciated that I had some prior knowledge before I was a developer. That I did have some prior knowledge of SQL. Um, but what they were mostly concerned about is whether they could teach me effectively and whether I could jump in and immediately be a team player. They didn't want somebody that was going to be like, that was not immediately going to be able to just slip right in and join the team and be eager to learn and be trainable. That's what they wanted. So I only really had one technical question, and it was just look at this SQL statement and tell us what it's doing. And it was not a difficult SQL statement. It was a select statement with like an outer join. And I think it was doing like there was like some field renaming going on, and that was it. Like it was not difficult at all. And all of the other questions, I had multiple rounds of interviews, and all of the other questions were behavior. Tell us about projects that you've done. How do you work with teams? How would you learn? Tell us about conflict. What do how do you handle conflict? How do you, behavioral all the way down. And I'm not going to say that every interview is going to be like that, but people tend to get hung up on the technical questions when you really also got to focus on behavioral because that can be just as important, if not more so. Also, just generally coming across naturally in an interview, speaking well, that kind of thing. Yeah, Bevran, DBAs do load balancing, security, query tuning, permissions, blah, blah, patching, update. Yeah, I'm not really interested in all that kind of stuff. I prefer being a developer. T-shirt gang, indeed. Time to break out a banana suit. Yeah, Florence. It was. Oh, and thank you, Safety Vet. Thank you for the birthday wishes. Yes, appreciate it. Yeah, I can't believe it's most behavioral. Like I say, that's not, not every interview is going to be like that, but also don't let behavioral questions fall to the wayside. Um, because behavioral questions also kind of help you convey your individuality and type of person that you are. And they can sort of help you generate a rapport with your interviewer. Um, so those can be an opportunity as well. Piece of shit. Yeah. Do we want to work with you for the next 2 years? That's not Leon being repetitive. It just boils down to that at the end of the day. Yes. They want to know you as a person so that they can know whether they actually want to work with you. Because you could be the best coder in the world, but you can also be an a-hole and not somebody that they actually want to work with. So that's what they're also trying to suss out is are you going to be a good fit personally as well as technically? Everyone says, I interviewed with Riot Games recently. Whew. There was 1.5 hours of technical interview time with only 2 coding questions. This is Riot Games, people. There is 1.5 hours of technical interview time with only 2 coding questions. There were 3 hours of values and behavioral interview time. Yes. Yeah. About who you are as a person. Because they're going to want to, if they're a good company, they're going to want to train you, in their processes and in the technical stuff. They're going to have a unique set of processes and they're going to want to mold you to fit those processes. And so, part of that is, can you be molded? Can you collaborate and learn well so they can shape you into exactly the person that they want you to be? Yeah. Yeah, Smile Girl. What if we can't relate it? Yeah, that's fine, Smile Girl. If you can't relate it to tech, yep. Like think about the last question that I answered with the tuition and fee model, right? I mean, yeah, that there's a technical component, but I never said I didn't say that I coded it. I didn't code it. I did it in Excel. Um, I mean that's a piece of tech, but everybody everybody can use Excel. Um, and so that I was able to answer that question without really relating it to tech at all. Um, and like the previous question when I said I was testing that shipping app, yeah, I mean it was an app I was testing, but I was just pushing buttons. I didn't do any of the coding. Um, and so yeah, you can definitely relate all of these answers, and you should be able to relate all of these answers to non-technical stuff. Um, it's all about just collaboration, learning, communicating. That's what it boils down to. I saw a recommendation on YouTube about trying to cut short the behavioral interview and show your 100 hours project during the interview. Do you think this is a good idea? Mm, you better have a damn good 100 hours project if you're trying to kind of control the narrative in that way. Um, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily try to steer it unless you're damn sure that your 100 hours project is going to knock their socks off. Um, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that. Did Leon say that, Floyd, or was that somebody else that was saying? You don't have to tell me who. I'm just curious. That seems like an odd recommendation to me. But maybe I'm not understanding the context. I don't have any context here, so maybe I'm not fully understanding. I love folks with the Fortran, the COBOL. Oh man, got some folks with some deep lore here as far as their coding knowledge. That's awesome. Safety, yes, that's exactly what you want to be like. Safety vest. I am the full stack engineer, Play-Doh that we're looking for. Absolutely, you are ready to be molded to fit their process, and you are going to be like Gumby. You're going to be flexible. You're going to be adaptable. You're going to roll with the punches, and you're going to jump right in there. Absolutely. Yeah, there's still Fortran and COBOL jobs out there, and they tend to pay a ton. Indeed, yes, they do. Yeah, Beverin, and we're gonna talk about that maybe a little later. Is how do you ask questions back? Yeah, absolutely. Someone else. Okay, so someone else was saying, all right, yeah. Yeah. I mean, it could be a personal, like as far as like relating things back to your 100-hour project. If you consider your 100-hour project to be your main accomplishment, and that's totally fine. Yeah, you can definitely mine that accomplishment for answers to these questions. And yeah, if that's your only thing, like if that's and it's fine if that's your only thing. You just, like I said earlier, if you have very few things to talk about, then just learn how to slice and dice those things to satisfactorily answer those questions, whatever it is, whether it's your 100 hours project, your freelance work, whatever. Just figure out how to brainstorm it with somebody else and figure out how to slice and dice until you get what you need. Yep. I don't think it matters exactly what it is, as long as it is a logical answer to the question, whether it's technical, non-technical, 100 hours project, whatever, as long as it meets the needs of the question. Yeah, Chris, I agree. Tread carefully if you're trying to actually steer an interview. So like if you're avoiding answering the question and saying, no, I want to talk about this instead, that can be dangerous. You got to be, I'm not saying don't do it. If you truly cannot answer the question, there are ways that you can kind of guide things to say like, well, I haven't worked with specifically, like, I haven't worked with specifically what you're asking about, but here's another way that I applied something similar. And I'll talk about a way that I've done, XYZ that's very similar to that. So yeah, you can be honest and be like, no, I don't have direct, I think so. During my interview for the SQL position, I was asked if I had experience with like ETL processes, which is like extract, transform, load, which is a very common way of moving data, from extracting data from a source, doing transformations on it, and then loading it into an end location in the database. That's very common. However, at the time, I didn't have that kind of experience because I was mostly used to working with databases running like very simple queries on them. So I didn't have experience with ETL. But instead, I said no. I was honest. I said, look, no, I don't have experience with ETL. However, here's some of the other sort of things I've done, like working with Microsoft Power Automate, that are kind of a similar sort of a logical chain of events that happen with code. So not with code, but like with a program. So that's kind of what I said instead. For example, when answering question 7, talk about the 100 hours project and if they would like to see the next. Yeah. So that's a valid thing to relate it to. Yeah, absolutely. But you're not ignoring the question. You're using your accomplishment, which case here it's the 100 hours project. You're using that as an accomplishment in order to answer the question. So I think the distinction is that you don't want to ignore the question. You just want to find the appropriate, if you're using your 100 hours project to answer the question, then that's perfectly valid. The CLT, should it be a feature or something specific, or just mentioning a full project would do? What's the answer to the question? What meets the criteria of the question? If you want to talk about a specific feature, if that's the right answer. So if you say, give an example of an important project goal you reached and how you achieved it. If you were directly involved with designing a feature of a project and that's something you really worked on, then you talk about the feature. If if you want to talk about the whole project, then it just needs to be appropriate answer, right? There's no hard and fast rules here. You just got to think about what is an appropriate answer to the question. Safety Vest says, I'm down to practice with y'all in the voice channels if folks need to practice in the next few weeks. Yes, absolutely. Like I said at the beginning, I know a lot of folks weren't here at the beginning of our discussion, but what I said is essentially a lot of times folks have a hard time both finding what their accomplishments are and then owning those accomplishments, being able to speak to them, to say like, look, here's what I did and here's why it's cool. So I think that's a really good thing to practice. And it may start out with you simply, and it's great to practice that with another person, because this other person can look at your list of accomplishments and tell you like, damn, like that was really cool what you did there. And you might not even recognize that was cool, but somebody else is gonna be like, hell yeah, that was cool. Like that was freaking awesome. Tell me more. And then that'll teach you how to speak to that as an accomplishment. Um, so I would say, yeah, definitely get into the voice channels with somebody else. And it could be that even you start out by just listing very factually, here's my work history. I worked in a shipping department. I was a manager in an office. I worked as a fry cook. I don't know. I was a delivery driver, that kind of thing. And then they'll say, wait, so you were a delivery driver? Like, who did you work for? Like, what did you do? And then those types of questions will help you learn how to dig into your history to find out what did I actually achieve, and how can I speak to that. So that can be a really good way to help you think more critically and positively about yourself. Um, yeah. My friend says, in one of my interviews, I was asked, what are you working on in any aspect of your life? I responded that I am working on the yoga position Birds of Paradise. Yeah, that's something really interesting. I mean, that kind of gives a little spice to the interviewer's day. Um, might perk their ears up a little bit, like, oh, that's interesting. You do yoga. Wow, really cool. Because they talk to a lot of people, and it can get really draining. And so if you can add a little spice to their day, that can be good as well. Uh, Develop, do you have a link to download the document? It can be really useful. Yeah, I think Rascal posted the link a little early. Rascal, do you still have that link? I can always dig it up again if you need to. Or anybody. If Rascal still has it, or Mavi, or whoever. Ah, thanks, Rascal. Yeah, Rascal just shared the link there. Yeah, and so there's a good discussion here going on in the chat about interviewing them back. So interviewing the interview. So let's touch on that a little bit. So yeah, Beverin has a great point there. When they're going to be asking you questions, and then a great way you can show interest in their company is by asking them questions back. And I touched on this a little bit earlier when talking about how researching the company itself and researching their initiatives, the current things that the company is passionate about, and then asking about those things. That can really show your genuine interest in their company, and their accomplishments and their initiatives. But you don't have to limit it to just like company initiatives. You really should be asking questions about culture, about the how they train, how they work, what the day-to-day work is like. I really like asking that question about, like, what does an average day in the life look like for somebody on this team? What's the type of things you would be doing day to day, outside of the larger projects. Like, what does a single day look like, especially, and what does a single day look like for a new person on the team versus someone who's a little bit more experienced. um I know that oh, Cabrandi, thanks for coming. Yeah, definitely enjoy the full stack stream. Yeah. um yeah, how success is measured. I know that, and here's a little area, just disclaimer, here's an area where Leon and I differ a little bit. Leon heavily advises not asking about culture until after you get a job offer. So after you've gone through all the interviews and they give you an offer, that's when you start asking. He advises that's when you start asking about culture. Um, I obviously do not have his level of experience. I would say that when I am in an interview, I like asking about culture in the interview itself, asking just stuff like, yeah, so just learning about the vibe, learning about the day to day, learning about the training style, learning about you know the the type of day to day work the team is doing, what projects you're going to be assigned, that kind of thing. Um, and so I mean, that's, six of one, half dozen of the other. I mean, Leon suggests not asking about culture until after you get the offer. But if you have several interviews and you're trying to choose between these companies, kind of knowing the culture going in can really help you decide, um, whether it's a offer you want to pursue. So even if the money is good, if the culture sucks, it's not worth it. Believe me, it is not worth it. Um, yeah, what do they look forward to every day? What they loved about their recent challenges? Those types of cultural questions. Yeah, yeah. And there is the concern that you would, by probing too much into the culture, you might jeopardize, they might think you're asking too much, you're being too picky, that kind of thing. I don't know. I feel like that shows a genuine interest into whether you would be a good fit within their culture. Um, I feel like it helps, but that's me. I just have a different perspective on it than Leon does, and he has way more experience than I do. So take your pick. Yeah. Yeah, and Piece of Shoot recommends after the offer too. Yeah. So that's your choice how you want to approach that. Yeah, Rascal, I really like that. So if they hit you with the where do you see yourself in X years question, ask where they'd see you in that same time period. So that kind of turns it back around and be like, okay, well, how are you gonna where do you want how do you want your developers to progress, or how do you want your engineers to progress in that same time period? Where do you for other folks that have been in this role for 5 years, 10 years, whatever, where have some of those folks ended up? Do people stick around? Do they get promoted? Are they still in the same role because they love it so much, and the money is good? Or do they leave? That can be a huge cultural indicator as well. That's a great point there, Rascal. um, Yeah, but Befren, but there's ways you can kind of suss out culture before you get there. Um, so asking, what's the day to day like? Um, Asking what's the time off? What's time off like? That I think the time off question is maybe something you might want to save until after you get an offer. But what is the is it unlimited PTO? Are there holidays? Is it a work, like if they say like work hard, play hard, then that's a real red flag. So there's tons of articles online about how you can suss out culture. Um, and you can definitely get a vibe. You can definitely get a feel of the vibe because the interviewer is gonna they're gonna know, and they're gonna give you hints. Yeah. Yeah, teams can also differ from company vibe as well. Absolutely. That's a great point, Safety Vest. Yeah. Even just in my current employer, I've worked on a couple different teams, and they have all had different vibes. I will say my current team that I work on now has the best vibes. It's great. It's fantastic. It's low key. It's chill. I never feel anxious. Um, Whereas other teams I've worked on with the same employer have had very different vibes. It's been stressful. It's been chaotic. It's been uncertain. So yeah, individual teams can have their own structure and vibe, definitely. Rascal says, "Oh, nobody's been here for 5 years." Yeah, no, that's a big red flag as well. Yeah, if people don't stick around at all. Safety vest says, "Yeah, we're like a family. Does not equal family." Exactly. I fell for that trap, safety vest, at a previous employer. I won't say which one. But yeah, at a previous employer, I definitely fell for the family trap. The CEO was always saying we're like family, and golly gee, in the end, it was not like family at all, unless it was a really terrible family. Yeah, an abusive family indeed. Yeah, piece of shit. That's a good point too. You can always ask, okay, well, why is the position available? Are you expanding the team? Did somebody leave? Did somebody retire? Was fired? That's it. That can be a great cultural question as well. Why have you made this position available now? Yeah. You got recruiters for Amazon, Alexa, and Google. That's rad. Yeah, awesome. So exciting, Saywan. Say you want. Yeah, sorry. High turnover. Yeah. Any tips for asking about parental leave? I don't want to imply anything, but that is pretty important. You could ask about like the general benefits sphere. Um, or rather than just focusing on specifically parental leave, you can be like, yeah, so what are what are what's the benefits like, what sort of things do you offer? And a lot of companies will even have that on their website, so you don't necessarily have to go in blind. You can kind of get an idea, usually by looking at their website. They'll kind of advertise that sort of thing, um, and then maybe ask specific questions if you have them, without necessarily focusing on just one on the specific parental leave benefit. I have a 15 to 20-minute conference on July 11th for Google. That's so cool. Yeah, definitely practice. Get on the Discord. Just do rehearsal back and forth with folks. It's the more you practice with folks, the better you'll get. You get your own parking space, but the position is remote. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, they might you might have companies trying to lure you into a position that is, you think it's remote, and then they're like, no, actually, you're gonna have to come into the office 3 days a week. Yeah, that ain't happening. I'm never going into an office again, unless it's for like a all hands meeting or like once a year. But nope, no bueno. Okay, I think we are at break time, so we got to take our break. We're having a wonderful discussion. I'm really loving this. Great discussion. But we need to take a break to be healthy. So 5 minutes, and I will see you all back here. But let's keep it going. I'm gonna try to keep up with the chat when I get back. But yeah, loving this so far. It's really great. Thank you all for participating. So 5 minutes. I'll see you all back here very shortly. Okay. And go. Okay, folks, we got about a minute left, so come on back when you're ready. You're going to try to blow through the rest of these questions in 45 minutes or so. I have stopped the timer so it doesn't beep at us. And come on back when you are ready to do so. And let's keep plowing through these questions. All right. Get my camera back on here. Oh, hello. Okay. All right. So let's try to, I'm going to try to move a little faster so we can get through a little bit more of these. But I have really been enjoying the conversation. It's been really great to hear everybody's inputs and opinions and lots of good back and forth here. So I don't want to stifle that, but I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next question, I think. Okay. Alrighty. So next question here. Describe a situation in which you experienced difficulty in getting others to accept your ideas. What was your approach? How did this work? And were you able to successfully persuade someone to see things your way? Okay, yeah, so oh, winter, yes. Yeah, that always works, right? Yeah, if somebody doesn't agree with you, just call them stupid. That'll convince them. Yeah. That's perfect. No. Okay, so I'm gonna 10 out of 10. Yeah, 10 out of 10 with rice, indeed. So I'm gonna think about it. I'm gonna try to think of a different project here that we can talk about where I have had to had difficulty in getting others to accept my ideas. Well, depending on how this interview goes right now, getting you to hire me. Yeah, that would be the joke answer. If you got a good banter going with the interviewer, you could always throw a joke in there. Okay, so I think I have one here. So when I was working as a data analyst, we had a very intensive sort of end of year process in which all of the various business departments could decide to sort of restructure their data elements, and they could choose to sort of add more granular elements if that was going to help them analyze their own data. They could remove elements, they could shift the hierarchies around, and they could really change these hierarchical relationships as their individual organizational units had changes like within them, structural changes within them. And the way that it had been done in years past was, just a lot of Excel spreadsheets passed back and forth. And Excel is great for a lot of things, but it's not necessarily always great for conveying complex visual relationships. However, there are tools that are very good at that. And one of those tools is Visio, Microsoft Visio. And I sort of proposed using Visio for this process, and a lot of the folks that had been on the team for much longer than me were like, no, we can just use Excel. We've always used Excel before. It works. Excel is fine. We shouldn't have to change. We're all really stressed out anyway. Why would we bother changing? It's fine. And I wasn't getting a lot of traction just saying this stuff, just saying the words. Maybe we should try Visio. Okay, fine. So what I did was I went out and I did a proof of concept. I went out to Visio. I didn't know how to use Visio, but I Googled it and I learned how to use it. And I built these hierarchical relationships. Just one sample for one business unit. I built that out in Excel, or sorry, not in Visio. And I essentially said, look, let's just take this to the meeting with the business unit, and we'll present this to them. and we'll see how it goes. If they don't like it, that's fine. I'll drop it and we'll go back to the old way. But let's try it and let's see what they think. And they loved it. They loved using Visio because the visual information was much better conveyed. So it worked by doing a proof of concept and testing it with a small sample size with just one, just not expending too much energy, not expending too much time, just testing it with one small group as a pilot. And after getting that buy-in from the business unit, then the other team members were much more receptive to using Visio for the rest of the business units as well, and this sort of discussion process with the business units. And it also persuaded them to pick up a little bit of that knowledge themselves and learn how to use Visio a little bit, because really they didn't want to expend the hours and the brain power to pick up something new at such a busy time. It was just too much. Like they didn't want to think about it. But when I was able to demonstrate that it was actually a valuable investment of their time, then that made them much more likely to want to try to pick it up and want to try to use it because they saw the value in it after that. And so after that I was able to successfully persuade them to see things from my approach. And so what I could have done is just tried to argue. I could have tried to keep verbally beating my head against the wall in these verbal conversations, but instead what I was like, all right, I went radio silent for a little bit, and then I came back to the table with a proof of concept, which was able to physically demonstrate the success of this tool. And your planet says, no one wants to pay for a Visio license, but Visio is awesome, worth the money. Yes, it is. It's a very cool tool. That question, I don't know if I have anything to say. I'm a pharmacy technician at a pharmacy, and I don't know if I have had any conflict on people accepting my idea. Besides, I don't know if I can talk about my pharmacy technician experience. Yes, you can absolutely talk about your pharmacy technician experience. That is perfectly valid. And as far as people accepting your idea, have you ever suggested a process improvement at the pharmacy? Maybe have you ever said maybe there's a way we could do things more efficiently? And have you ever maybe have you ever had a conflict with a customer, and how did you resolve that conflict? Those type, you can think about it in those types of terms as well. So if you've never had difficulty in getting others to accept your ideas, you could also maybe just kind of pivot that question a little bit and maybe talk about a general conflict that you had with someone else. You can maybe make the question a little bit more general if you truly cannot answer this in the way it was specifically phrased. Yeah, Shogo, and it could be, it doesn't have to be like a full blown all out conflict. It could just be a time when you had a suggestion and maybe it was ignored and you still went and tried something anyway. Yeah. And like I said, this one is a little bit more niche too. And it could be that you just say, well, I've never necessarily had difficulty in getting others to accept ideas, but here's the time when I, was in conflict, and here's how I approached that conflict and resolved it. So it could be you could maybe generalize the question a little bit and still answer it in that way. Yeah, every pharmacy has their own processes and workflows. Absolutely. Um, have you ever contributed to the improvement of that workflow in any way? Yeah. Hey, Arcady, welcome. Yeah, Shogo. So, you struggle with the questions. So, what kind of experience do you have? Has there ever been a time when maybe even not in maybe even not in a work setting? Have you ever had a suggestion outside of work where someone had difficulty accepting the idea, and then you were able to still implement your idea in the end? And then how did you do that? You've had conflict with where customers can't customers can't get their medications for some reason, and we had to reason with them. Yeah, so you have I feel like any frontline type of work, whether you're in pharmacy or retail or hospitality or like a restaurant setting, I feel like all those folks, you have to have good conflict management and good negotiation skills to survive. Otherwise, I mean, you're not gonna get anywhere in the industry if you don't. So I really admire the skills of those frontline type people to talk down the crazies every once in a while. So yeah, if you can definitely touch on that type of negotiation, that type of conflict resolution, that's a huge skill to have. Yeah. Okay, so let's go ahead and go on to the next question here. Feel free to, ask questions about previous questions, make comments or ask questions about previous questions if you would like to. I'm just kind of moving along a little bit so we can get through a few more before 10 o'clock and we wrap up. Um, Breezy says, I've worked as an academic tutor and this has been a part of my job for quite some time. You learn to negotiate. Yes, absolutely. Negotiating with the people, the way people see information, the way they absorb information. Yeah, that's huge. That's massive. Great skill to have. Yeah. Oh, inner planet. Yeah. Yeah. That's great. That is some great. That's a great way to visualize it. You help review the patient drug list and made suggestions on generics. So that in that case, the patient maybe was not receptive to the idea of a generic at first, but you come up with a plan. You negotiate with them to help sell them on the idea of generics, and how to negotiate for those generics to save them money in the long run. Yeah, that's absolutely true. And even if this would be a point where you could spin it as, even maybe a patient was totally cool with generics from the start, but that's where you can maybe spin things a little bit to talk about, to take it from the angle where you're negotiating with the patient to get them to accept generics. So you're not fabricating anything. You're just maybe spinning the approach a little bit to better meet the question. Leon calls it massaging. Indeed, yes, you are you're not fabricating. It's something that you have absolutely done in the past, and it is the actions are true. The approach is maybe being slightly modified to meet the needs of the question. Yes, and that is perfectly valid. Yep, that's the way I like to do it. Is that you're modifying things just slightly. You're modifying the lens. You're modifying the lens through which you view the action to meet the needs of the question. It was either two extremes. Either I was the expert and people just went along with my ideas, or I got kind of enraged to where I had to get a manager because they wouldn't listen to what I was telling them. I worked in food service and I had issues with the latter. Yeah, that's rough. Food service is a hard deal. When I moved to IT, it was mainly the former. Okay, so maybe focus on the former, on the parts where you were the expert. How did you make people go along with your ideas? How did you convey that you were the expert? Right? Uh, why did people go along with you in the first place? How did you project I am the expert here? Because that's a skill too, making people understand that, like, I know my shit, right? Sorry, I don't normally curse. But yeah, how do you convey that you're the expert? Winter says, seems like I've only convinced people through showing. What do you mean by that, Winter? How do you show people? When you're showing, you're still communicating, maybe just not with words, but you're still showing. That's still a valid resolution. Like that's basically what I did in that example that I gave, and the answer to the question that I gave. I i couldn't get through verbally, so I just freaking showed them. I said, look, we're going to do this, and I'm going to do a demo. And so that's a perfectly valid way to get your point across, by showing people. Sometimes words are not the answer, and what's important there, Winter, is that you knew that words were not the answer, and so you found a better way to convey the information. So it's not that you just showed them; it's that you modified your approach to to get the information across. Yeah, say one. Most times patient want brand medication instead of generic. Yeah. So you got to convince them sometimes, right? And everybody that got a freelancing or volunteer client also had some experience with negotiating, getting people the features they're willing to pay for. Yeah. Do what Winter Stasis did. I made a detailed sheet with labels and then explained my knowledge. Like I know the service now. Yeah, absolutely. So okay, so that's a valid answer, Shogo. There. So let's talk. Let's workshop that a little bit. So let's. So we're gonna go back to question 8 here for just a second. Describe a situation in which you experienced difficulty in getting others to accept your ideas. So in Shogo's case, um, it was maybe getting having difficulty conveying like the information on these labels. Um, and so your approach was that you made a very informative and detailed sheet of all these labels. And then carefully explained each of the components on this once you had this detailed reference. Um, and then that's how it worked, was that you were just able to say like, look, here's the just this global view of everything, and I'm going to go through and carefully explain each of these things to you. And then that gave them the comfort to feel like I understood what was best for them, and that's how I was able to successfully persuade someone to see things my way, basically through careful explanation, um, and through application of knowledge in a structured way through this example sheet. So Shogo, that's how I would answer that question for you. I know I don't have, I don't have all the context here, but based on what you've said, that's how I would answer that question for you. Yeah, see, there you go. Yeah, you just figure out how to reframe these things that you did. You didn't just say I'm the expert. You actually came up with a very detailed and careful explanation for these people. That's how they knew you were the expert. So yeah, that's great. That's awesome. Hey, Mama, welcome. Yeah. No, we're having a really great discussion about these interview questions. I love this back and forth. This is really fun. It's also a fun challenge for me. I'm enjoying, you know, finding creative answers to this and answering folks' questions. I enjoy this. So I'm glad you're able to join, Mama. Uh, yeah, and Inner Planet is dropping some really great knowledge here. Understanding the inner workings of how drugs are chosen, approved, and applied. In a dev job, you do the same, and you learn the inner workings of performance, refactoring apps, seeing how certain tools and frameworks work together, and experiences. So yeah, and so many times this experience is super transferable, and people just don't value their past experience enough to see that. Things like customer service, um, working in a fast-paced environment, such as like a kitchen or a retail, working in a group environment, such as anything in the service industry, really. Working with customers teaches you how to collaborate. Working with you know clients of any kind. All of that is super transferable. Working in a high stress industry, can teach you how to solve problems quickly and efficiently with few resources, which is also really valuable in dev work as well. Yeah. Okay, so let's go on to the next one. Tell me about a situation when you were responsible for project planning. Did everything go according to your plan? If not, then why? And what type of counter actions did you have to take? I think that maybe supposed to be countermeasures, but either way, it still makes sense. Okay, situation. So again, I'm going to try to think of something different here. Um, Tell me about a situation where you're responsible for project planning. Okay. Yeah, so responsible for project planning. Okay. So at one point I was brand new to being a data analyst, and I was immediately placed onto a project team, um, and asked to help build a new sort of a budgeting tool. and I was immediately asked to start working with a developer. I didn't write any of the code. I was supposed to be sort of responsible for like the business, gathering business needs, and features. And so I think with any project, nothing is ever going to go 100% to plan. And that's important to understand with any project. That's important to be cognizant of going in, is that nothing is ever going to go 100% to plan. And so you need to be adaptable, flexible, and have contingencies ready to go. You need to build in flexibility to the schedule, and you need to build in flexibility and understanding of flexibility into everyone's initial view of the project, to say like, look, here's our goal, and now but let's be ready to be accommodating, to be adaptable, and be flexible. And so you need to set the appropriate ground rules. So I was brand new to the role at the time, and I was made co-responsible for planning a massive project. And so no, everything didn't go according to plan, because you can't understand all the components going in. If not, then why? So why it didn't go according to plan was because a very common issue, which is scope creep. And by scope creep, I mean that as people become aware of the possibilities of the project, they end up wanting to, and as they grow their understanding, they end up wanting to add features as they think of more things that they want. They're like, oh, well, it can do thing A. Well, then I want to add thing A.2 to this as well, because I think that would be really useful for me. And here's why it would be so useful for me. And why can't you just let me add this? And so in the end, what you have to do is you have to listen to the folks that want to add these additional features, figure out the cost benefit analysis of this. Is it going to be really going to add value, or is it just going to take a lot of effort and make things way more complicated? And you have to do your best to filter out those types of requests and have those hard conversations with the stakeholders to say like, look, I can understand this is very important to you, but it's just going to be too much overhead at this time. Let's consider maybe adding it after we deploy and after we've tested. Let's maybe consider adding this to a future deployment process, a future development cycle for this project. And so those are hard conversations to have, but we did have to have several of those conversations. Of course, a few maybe unnecessary features did slip through. But we were able to at least stave off some of the scope creep and keep the project on track through deployment. That darn creep and scope, indeed. And mentioning stuff like that shows that you kind of have like a knowledge of the common pitfalls of development, right? Projects are all, and I think, and I really like this question to say like, because if they're going to ask you, did everything go according to plan? No, it never does. And I think it's important that that they want you to recognize that. They want you to acknowledge that things are never going to go 100% according to plan. Something is always going to go wrong. And so what they really want to know is, how did you handle that? When things went off the rails, what did you do? Did things fall apart? Or were you able to ride that wave and, and roll with those punches? Oh, thanks, Shogo. I appreciate it. Well, and it's practice. And that's the most, I keep telling you all, get on the Discord and just run these questions back and forth. It'll be really awkward and really weird at first, and it'll feel really yucky for some folks. But the more you practice it, the more fluent you get, and the more there's certain patterns, there's certain underlying patterns that you can kind of store in your brain and rely on and dig and mine from as you answer these questions. There's certain, you're not memorizing things, but you're setting patterns in your brain. Yeah. So once you can start, the sooner you can start setting those patterns, the sooner you'll start getting more comfortable with answering these questions, over and over again. Yeah. Thanks for coming, Frazee. Good to have you. It's 4 a.m. over here. My goodness. 90% of things going wrong seems to be dealing with expectations falling short. Yeah. And managing expectations is another big part of successfully managing a project, is not letting expectations um, get too out of hand and too overblown by certain parties, and also making sure that expectations across different stakeholders, between different stakeholders, making sure that they align. One stakeholder may think, well, we're going to handle it this way because that's what makes sense for my business unit, and then another stakeholder might say, no, I thought we were handling it this way because the way that you're saying doesn't make any sense to me. I don't understand. And so keeping expectations manageable and keeping expectations aligned between stakeholders. Those are two big parts of project management as well. That can be really hard, and sometimes you're not successful, and sometimes that's when you just got to roll with it. Something else I was going to mention, gone out of my brain. I hate it when that happens. Saying something about going. Oh yeah, practicing going into the Discord. Yeah. And so another thing, just practicing really does help make perfect in these types of situations. And what I was going to do is speak from my personal experience. So I am diagnosed with social anxiety, like literally professionally diagnosed, anxious as hell. But what's really helps me manage that is practicing. I do a lot better when I know that there are rules to a certain engagement, right? That there are certain scripts and paths that you can follow. And in this case, what helps me do well in interviews is knowing that I have these patterns in my brain, not memorized answers, but like patterns in your brain that you can draw from easily and quickly, and so you don't have time to panic, because you can just pull stuff out of your brain and string it together into a valid answer. That doesn't mean I don't get nervous. I definitely get nervous in interviews, and a little nervousness is helpful. Being nervous is helpful. I still get a little bit like nervous before every stream, but then I get into it and I'm having fun because there's rules to the engagement. There's patterns to follow, and I can follow those patterns. Um, Having a routine, absolutely. And so, how do you get a routine? You practice. Yeah, so get into the Discord and practice. And those folks with social anxiety, I feel you. I've been there. I have been, putting massive pit stains in my shirt, in my armpits, because I'm so terrified to talk. But the more you practice, honestly, the better you will get. So for those, for you have never one time been in an interview like ever before. Okay, well, all the more reason to practice. All the more reason to, well, I don't know whether it's in the Discord or whether it's with a friend. Just run these questions, and like I say, it'll feel super awkward. It'll feel weird, but it's vitally important to do. Intelligence, I think. Oh yes, I don't seem to have any social issues. Yeah, no, but I genuinely do. But I'm able to overcome them with careful practice and preparation. And so that's that's a really great way to not cure it, but to overcome it. Yeah. As an introvert, I limited my coffee chats to twice a week. Yeah, absolutely. And some of that is setting limits on yourself too. Is not to not line up. If you're getting a lot of interest, is to not schedule too many recruiter chats or social interviews and that kind of thing. Make sure that your social batteries are able to stay charged up and that you're able to stay fresh and engaged and not get too overwhelmed. That's another component as well. Absolutely. Allowing your being kind to yourself and allowing that sort of prep time. Great conversation there. Yeah. Okay, let's do another one. Yeah, we did this one. Okay. Question 10. Okay. Tell me about a situation when you made a mistake at work. What happened exactly and how did you deal with it? What steps did you take to improve the situation? Okay, so I already talked about one time when I completely screwed up a project from the start and was mortified when I presented it to my boss all proud and happy, and it was completely wrong. So that was one, but I'm gonna try to find something else, something different to talk about here. So I have kind of a funny one. I mean, I can laugh about it now. So okay, here's another one. So when I was an operations manager for a light manufacturing facility, we had a massive Christmas rush, and our Christmas rush extended from like Thanksgiving all the way through to the end of December. Um, so it was like a solid month of just nonstop action. But things really only ramped up, like really ramped up at the toward the 20 like the 20th of December, because that's when you start getting shipping deadlines for orders, right? Something's got to get out the door in time to get to the customer by Christmas, right? You can't ship it on the 25th. It's not going to get there. So you need to time it so that it ships at exactly the right time in order to get out the door, get to the customer, and also not cost the company a ton of money in overnight shipping fees, especially at Christmas, because FedEx and UPS are gonna milk you dry for those types of fees at that time of year. Um, so one of my challenges as an operations manager was to make sure that every single one of those orders got out the door by Christmas. We literally had like a big clock on the like a big countdown on the wall that showed like number of orders left to ship, and it was massive. And it was on all the screens on all the production floor, and I was in charge of that stupid countdown to make sure that every order got out the door. Um, and so one Christmas, we'd been working like 12-hour days, 6 days a week, and it was crushing. And we were down to like the last 2010 orders, and it was countdown's ticking. We got people scurrying around the floor, finding these orders, tossing them onto conveyor belts. Get it, go, 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 go. And we're, the trucks are coming to pick up the last orders of the day. It's the last chance. And we're down to, I think it was like 3 orders left. And I was trying to, control the order flow, like, prioritize, come on, get these orders, get these orders. We could not find these last 3 orders. Nobody could find them. Like, where the heck are they? I had my poor one of my direct reports literally running around trying to find these stupid orders. And it turned out that I had made a mistake. I had been flagging these orders as like top priority, get them out now, get them out, get them out. I had flagged a couple of the wrong ones. So these last 3 orders that needed to be out the door, they weren't flagged. Nobody could find them. I had made a mistake, and it was a big one, and a very visible one, right? Everybody knew it was my fault. So what happened was my direct report actually was the one that raised the alarm and said, look, no, these orders aren't flagged. That's why we can't find them, because you didn't flag them. And so what did I do? Well, my direct report found the orders, and he got them out the door. He literally bribed the UPS guy with like candy or something to make him stay until he found these orders and ran them to the loading dock. And so my direct report there was the hero of the day. So I congratulated him. I gave him literally all the credit, and I owned my mistake. I said, yep, I screwed up. That's my bad. Completely my fault. My direct report was the one that saved Christmas. All credit to him. So I didn't try to hide my mistake, because everybody knew it was me already. I gave credit where credit was due. And then what steps did I take to improve the situation? Well, the following Christmas, I made sure that I had a second pair of eyes watching, not watching me, but double checking that I was flagging the right thing. And I engaged my direct report with also helping me make sure that, yep, this is a Christmas order and it's been flagged. It's ready to go. And so the next Christmas, we didn't have that problem because I involved more people in the process. And I owned my mistake, so they were watching for it. They were making sure they teased me. They teased the heck out of me. The next Christmas, and I took the teasing because it was my fault. And so we made it into a learning experience rather than an experience of shame. Yeah. So that's so again, when they ask about mistakes or negative things, so when an interview is asking you about mistakes, negative things, that kind of thing, you always want to make sure that you are turning it into, yes, here's what happened. You can speak about what happened in a factual way without um, making things overtly negative. So speak about the facts of what happened, and then focus on how was this transformed into a positive? How was it made into a learning experience? Yeah, piece of shoot. Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, networking really worked for you. Yeah, yeah. And I mean, it worked. It helped me too get this dev role. I'd spoken to the, I'd started networking with the manager before I even ever went into my first interview for my current role. Yeah. Oh, thanks, Chris. I appreciate that. Yeah, city one. So okay, I got a mistake at work. Whenever I feel like I am rushed at work, I tend to give wrong medication because the manager was complaining the patient was waiting a long time, but I had a lot of things to do. Pharmacist said to me, "Take your time. Don't feel like you're too rushed, and just relax a bit." Okay, we can workshop this too as well. Let's change the way this is phrased a little bit. So I think you probably want to focus on that as more of like a one time thing versus like a thing that happens. I don't know if the way it reads right now, it sounds like it happened more than once. Um, but I think when you speak about it, if you were to speak about it in an interview, you would probably want to speak about it in more of like a one time type thing. Say like, yes, one time I was feeling rushed and a little bit overwhelmed at work. I was trying to help as many people as I possibly could, and I was getting some complaints from a manager that a patient was waiting for such a long time, and so I wanted to try to help them. Um, and I, you might you could maybe say like I nearly gave the wrong medication, but we caught it in time. Um, However, I know that that can be a very negative thing that could happen. And so, how did I improve this situation? Well, I spoke to the pharmacist, and they gave, having been in the industry for a long time, I felt like they would be a good person to approach to speak about ways to mitigate this situation from happening again. And the pharmacist was very helpful, and they advised me on some ways that I could take my time without feeling rushed. And they advised me on some ways to relax in these high stress situations so that I could think clearly and manage my tasks more efficiently in these high stress type situations. And so, with that knowledge in hand, I was able to stay more cool and collected in future high stress situations and make sure that everybody received the appropriate products in the end, and that customers were dealt with in a positive way. So that's maybe how I would rephrase that for you, say one. Safety says I practiced my way into conversations with mid-tier hiring devs. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. You said you were going to quit 100 devs back in February when we were told to talk to people, but now you're practicing your way into conversations with mid-tier hiring devs. Yes, practice, practice, practice. Absolutely. Yeah, it's a pragmatic approach to problem solving. Here's the situation. Here's the target. Here's the steps we need to follow. Yep, situation, task, action, result. And I can't say that I follow that in every single answer that I've ever given. But it is a great way if you when you're trying to formulate the answers. If you're struggling with how to formulate answers, star and car are really great ways to frame that. Yep. Yeah, it's a really great structure. Absolutely, piece of shoot. Yeah, highly agree. Okay, time for a couple more, I think. This is good because I think we've gotten through most of the meatier questions, and a lot of these, these ones here at the end are a little bit more, a little shorter, a little bit more nebulous. Yeah. So I think we've done a pretty good job. Okay. Excuse me. Um, Next one. Tell me about a time when you worked with someone who was not completing his or her share of the work. How did you handle the situation? Did you discuss your concern with your coworker, with your manager? If yes, how did the coworker respond to your concern? Um, what was your manager's response? Okay, so I have kind of talked about a situation in which I was a people manager. I was a manager of people, and I had someone on my team who was not necessarily always living up to their expectations. But as promised, I'm going to try to find a different example that I can work with. And here's an example of where I'm going to take a real life situation and modify it slightly to kind of meet the needs of the question. But you won't know what's actually happened, what I modified. So it doesn't matter in the end. Um, oh yeah, this is a good one. Yeah, exactly. So okay. So in my role as a data analyst, I often had to interface with lots of different outside teams because my department that I worked in was very central. And so one of the teams that we had to work with was very overworked through really no fault of their own necessarily. They had some management issues. And one of the people on the team was the main sort of project planner for this other team that we were interviewing with. They kind of set the priorities, set the projects, and that was supposed to be their main role. However, in interfacing with them was very frustrating because a lot of the times they didn't seem really focused on learning about the types of priorities that we wanted to set. So they would forget things that we told them. They wouldn't really necessarily pay attention all the time. They would send us spreadsheets of priorities that were very confusing. And it made it hard for us to understand what was going to be handled next. Are they going to be tackling this issue, or are we going to have to live with this for the next year? Like, what are they even working on over there? Are they working on anything? What are they doing? And so we just didn't really understand. We didn't have a good line of communication with them because of this person who was supposed to be our conduit. They just didn't seem focused. They didn't seem to be focusing on the appropriate things. And so in this case, since the person was on a different team, I didn't necessarily reach out to them directly. However, I did raise the concern with my manager. But it's important to note how I raised the concern. I didn't go up to my manager and say, like, this person sucks. Their work sucks. They're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. Instead, what I did is I went to my manager and I said, "Hey, so I'm having some concerns about the information we're receiving from this other team." And I had some examples of the things I was concerned about. And I presented them in a calm and factual way. In some cases, there can be kind of the urge to maybe embellish or gossip, and kind of just complain, and vent. And sometimes that's not always a bad thing, but in the case of where you're trying to resolve a problem with another team where you may not have all the context, it's important to approach it in a factual manner and say, look, this is the problem. And I manager, I would appreciate your assistance in, figuring out the best way to resolve this problem rather than trying to focus on the person as being the problem. And in this case, the manager was grateful that I had raised the concern of this bad communication pipeline, because they had seen some signs of it as well, but they didn't have quite the same context that I did. And so together we were kind of able to approach to formulate a way to approach this other team, and say, like, look, we just don't feel like we're communicating well with you. We're having trouble understanding priorities. Is there a way that we can we assist you in showing what we're looking for and what we need from you in order to establish a good communication pipeline? And so in that case, we were able to collaborate with that team to come up with a better solution that was less work for the specific person that was having the problem. Because it turns out they had a lot of other stuff on their plate that we didn't know about. Um, and we were able to work together to come up with a better collaboration solution that was less work for them, and gave us more of the information that we needed. So, yeah. So yeah, that's how I would answer that question. And I changed some things. It's based loosely on a real situation, but part of it's fabricated, but it doesn't really matter in the end. Yeah, I didn't really have a super great example for that one, but I was able to come up with something that made sense. Uh, yeah, absolutely. I love Interplanet's dropping some really good knowledge here. Healthcare experience is definitely tech related. Yep. You're dealing with workflows, Epic, MyChart, touchscreen software. Yeah, totally. Healthcare is heavily invested in tech. There was a time when one coworker didn't complete the basket of medications that was supposed to be counted. The coworker left the giant stack for us and left without completing the patient medication. The manager complained, and me and the pharmacist had to explain the situation. The manager eventually told the coworker, and the coworker eventually completed the task. Yeah, so how you would maybe phrase that is saying, like, look, you collaborated with your manager to speak to or sorry, you collaborate with the pharmacist. I'm sorry. So you approached the pharmacist and you gained a kind of a second a witness or a second someone who was in agreement with you about the problem. So you had a little backup. And then you were able that together you were able to approach the manager, and then the manager was able to resolve it with the person that reported to them. Yeah, absolutely. CEO Codex, I need that confidence with any question. I internally freak if I even try to attempt to fabricate. Yeah. Again, comes with practice. You'll learn it's like improv, right? That's why they have improv classes. That's why people go to whole classes for this type of thing. Um, and so you learn how to kind of spin things. You become so comfortable with the things that you've done that you then learn how to make little additions and skew it in a way that makes sense. Um, Again, learn skill, just like anything else. Practice, practice. The BSA manager told me today that his 10-year-old could do the scope documents that I'm currently receiving. So should do my due diligence before developing anything. Ouch. Yeah, that's rough. BSA. So what does BSA? What does BSA stand for? Oh, business analyst. Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. I wonder. So I mean, I don't know the context of your current employer or anything like that. Um, I wonder, is that common knowledge that that person is kind of a jerk, or are they a jerk to everyone, or are they just being specifically like a jerk to you? Um, 'Cause yeah, that really sucks. Sounds like that business either that business manager is um or that business analyst is being like targeting you, or they don't understand the complexity of your work. Yeah. Oh, Tio Codex, thank you so much for the sub. Yeah, spend those Bezos bucks, baby. I love to see it. Uh, you gotta love the Bezos bucks. I think the business analyst I'm working with needs more feedback. He's fresh, so I was being warned about it from his manager. Okay. Yeah, a business analyst who's new should never be making those types of complaints about someone. Like, if they're new to the role, they cannot possibly understand what everybody else is doing enough to make those types of statements. And they shouldn't be doing that anyway. So I think that would be definitely feedback to give back to the manager to be like, look, yeah, he literally said this to me, or she, or whoever, they, whatever. This person literally said this to me. Um, and that would be, again, you can approach it in a factual way and be like, look, um, this person said this to me. Um, it made me feel like they don't understand the complexities of my work, and I would think that this person, as part of the role of a business analyst, it seems that they would need to understand the work that other people around them are doing in order to do business analyst type work. So it's concerning that they would say those types of things without trying to understand the actual processes that are already in place as they assume this new role. So approaching it in a sort of a factual way with concerns to the functioning of the business, that this person would say something like that. The functioning of the business is going to be impaired if this person is refusing to understand what other people around them are doing and the complexities of that work. So from a business functioning standpoint, that's a major concern. Yeah, so you wouldn't go back to the manager and be like, God, this person is a jerk, and even though they're absolutely, that was a jerk thing to say. But if you come at it hostile, you're going to probably get some resistance back. So coming at it from an area of genuine concern for like, whoa, this person, as a business analyst, it seems that they would need to understand how the business works. It seems that they're not really necessarily trying to understand how things work, and so that's concerning for the future functioning of the business with them in that role. So yeah, respect is key, absolutely. But then how you approach and give that feedback is also key as well. So in that way you have the high ground to sneak in a Star Wars quote there. If you approach it in a factual and uh, from a point of genuine concern, then yeah, you definitely have the high ground. Okay, it's 10 o'clock. Let's do one more, okay? We can do it. All right. Okay, describe a situation where you worked effectively under pressure. Oh man, I feel like a lot of my folks in the service industry or any customer facing industry are gonna be able to excel at this question because y'all are always under pressure. Um, I always have the high ground, trips off ledge. Yeah. Um, so I don't have very much experience in the service industry, but I mean I do have experience. So I'm going to answer this question from the perspective of my operations manager job. So I touched on briefly how um, in the e-commerce industry, we were beholden to customers, especially around Christmas time, and the Christmas season extended from Thanksgiving to Christmas. So the period of about a month. And for that entire month, we were working at full capacity, bringing in tons of temps, which meant tons of extra workers, which meant tons of extra orders, and lots of logistics challenges for me as an operations manager, making sure that orders, the pipeline was much more clogged with orders, and you still had to make sure that orders got out the door in the right order and on time. And so it was essentially like a month long pressure cooker of long hours and long days. And so working effectively under pressure, how I felt when working under pressure was at the time, very driven, um, because you knew what had to be done, and you knew that if you didn't do your part, that the whole system could collapse, and that was pretty much the mindset that everybody on the management team had, was that we all kind of knew our roles, and we all knew that everybody else on the team was really counting on us to fulfill those particular roles. Um, and what was going on was, yeah, just a ton of extra orders, a ton of extra employees. And how we got through it was basically not taking ourselves too seriously at any point. Um, Lots of humor, lots of jokes, lots of humor, but without being unprofessional about it. Having fun in the moments where we had time to have fun, trying to value our time and the time of others equally. So respecting people's time, respecting people's um, uh, downtime as well. So trying not to bother them unless we absolutely had to when they did have time off, and just being respectful and trying to keep that collaborative spirit with others. Because if you can, a rising tide lifts all boats, especially in times of stress. And so if you're able to be respectful and lift others up in these times of stress, they will lift you up as well, and you can all ride out that storm together. So yeah, that's how I choose to function in high stress environments. So yeah, that's how I would answer that question. um, yeah, working under pressure, I think, is something that a lot of us have experienced at various points and in various contexts. And for some folks, their jobs are nothing but high stress and high pressure. For some folks, it's cyclical. And yeah, I think how you answer that question really depends on like the nature of your previous work. I can try Bohemian Rhapsody. Peter says, I feel like many of my responses and stories so far touch on all of these questions rather than necessarily needing separate stories to perfectly match each narrow question. Yeah, absolutely. That's perfect. And that's kind of what I was saying earlier is that I'm choosing a different response for each question. But you don't necessarily have to. For a lot of folks, they're going to be able to do exactly what Peter has said. And really, just know a few, know your past history inside and out, and you can slice and dice the same, like the same experience multiple different ways to meet the needs of the question. So yeah, I could have taken, you know, my time as an operations manager and just focused on that literally the entire time and been able to answer all of these questions with just that one experience, or just even just the one experience of working on the shipping application for of just being like QA testing the shipping application for my time as an operations manager. I could have even just focused on that one narrow project and probably answered all of these questions with that. And so yeah, if you can slice and dice, you can just see things from slightly different angles, embellish where you need to, and you can answer all these questions even with limited experience. Yeah, say you on. So yeah, so that definitely sounds like a high stress environment. Absolutely. And so if I the way you phrased your response there is really it's not bad at all. The one thing I would say is maybe adding a but in there, so you can say I feel very rushed and overwhelmed, but here's how I handle it. So and you might even say I feel very rushed and overwhelmed sometimes, but I manage that stress by doing this. So, flipping it, only touching very slightly on the negative feelings, and then turning that around to say, and here's how I deal with it. Here's my positive solution. So yeah, under pressure, indeed. Dun 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 dun. Great song. Or Ice Ice Baby. Mama Ham, do you think it's important to say what the previous position was or massage the stories? Well, I mean, they're going to have your resume. They're going to know what the positions are. So you might just give them a little reference to be like, and when I was in such and such position, this is, you know, this is the situation I encountered, and here's how I handled it. They're going to have your resume. So they're probably going to want to tie these experiences to those positions to kind of keep them grounded as to what you're even talking about. Slice and dice and put a little spin, indeed. Oh, Chris making a remix, yeah. Oh boy. Not I don't have the best singing voice after 3 hours of talking. Yeah, okay. So I think it's probably about time to wrap up. But I really appreciated all the conversation from everyone today. This was really fun. And I'm glad we got through most of the questions. Like the rest of these are kind of more general, and you can find like for these types of more generic questions, You can find all sorts of methodologies to answer them online. You Google these questions, you're going to find, 6 billion different LinkedIn and Medium articles about how to answer these specific questions. And so feel free, you can read through those. These more like in-depth wordy questions are a little harder, I think, because they're more specific. But I do hope this was helpful, and kind of show you how everyone has things that they can be proud of. Non-technical things, non-developer related things are fine. They're perfectly valid experience. It's important to just know how to mine your own experience, to find those things to be proud of, and to slice and dice it to serve it up in a way that the interviewer is going to want to, is going to feel like you've answered their question in a way that they're going to understand and be able to appreciate. So. Oh, you struggle with number 13? Yeah. So in that one, again, it's important to know that you're a badass in your own way. Understand your own accomplishments. And when you talk about yourself, talk about how you're driven, you're adaptable, you want to learn, and you might need to tailor that answer slightly to fit the type of job you're interviewing for. So if it's like a very detail oriented type position, you might say, yep, I'm meticulous and organized, and maybe give a few quick examples of how you've been organized in your previous roles. If it's a high stress role, you could say like, yes, I function well under pressure. And, like, for example, in my previous role as a front desk manager for, a hotel night shift, it was very high stress in those situations, and I felt very comfortable in that role. So, the tell me about yourself question can sometimes depend on the role that you're interviewing for and what aspects of yourself you want to emphasize. So, yeah. I didn't miss anything here. Yeah, in the end of the day, an interview is just two people having a conversation about the opportunity. They want to find out if you're a good fit for the role and if you're going to work well with the rest of the team. And you're trying to figure out if the company is nice to work at. Yep. In the end, it's a conversation, and you want to, convey to them who you are in a way that fits the needs of the role. Yeah. Doggo alert. Yeah, my dog. He's been sleeping on the couch the entire time, and he decided to get up and stretch and shake a little bit. Yeah, Shogo. Again, just practice, and you will get better. I promise. It's going to be weird and awkward at first, but the more you practice, the more fluent you will become. Just like with anything, whether it's a language or programming or you know improv comedy or whatever. You get more fluent the more you do it. Can we say hi to the doggo? Let's see. I can try to angle the camera. Let's see if I can. There he is. He's on the floor. He got groomed today. I don't know how well you can see him. Yeah. Ooh. But make sure the camera doesn't fall down. Hang on. Stay up. Oh. My stupid ring light doesn't like to stay on top of the camera, and then it takes everything down with it. All right. There we go. I think it's okay. Yeah, Shogo. Yeah, and for anybody that just came in now, feel free. The VOD will be available on my channel for 60 days, and after that, it goes to my YouTube. So exclamation point YouTube if you want to see my older stuff, and exclamation point Twitter in the chat. So exclamation point YouTube in the chat, exclamation point Twitter in the chat if you want to see that sort of thing. My videos end up on YouTube after a while. And you can follow me on Twitter for any schedule updates or topic. I always announce my stream topic before I go live. So you can decide whether you want to tune in or maybe catch the VOD later, and that's perfectly fine. Just gives you a little heads up. I really don't post much else on Twitter besides schedule stuff. So do thing, bolster no. Yes, exactly. Do thing, bolster neurons, which do thing, indeed. Oh, I'm glad this was helpful for folks. Yeah, it was really fun. I love the back and forth. Are we doing camera fall wagers? Yeah, my ring light is like at an angle right now, so it's trying to fall off. My trusty painter's tape is holding it on there pretty well though. Oh, thanks for that. Yeah, I'm out of tea. It's empty, so there's a little bit left in there. There you go. That's your hydrate. Yeah, this was a very different stream. I know. I occasionally do branch out a little bit, and I never know how well it's going to go, but I feel like it went really well tonight. Yeah, I think I will do similar ones in the future. We've gone through most of the behavioral questions, and I think we'll probably do another stream. We'll do a stream on technical questions, probably sometime in the future. I kind of want to see how things go with Leon and how soon we resume classes. That's the question. And so, once classes resume, I'll definitely go back to class content just to keep up and do this. For those of you who don't know, for those of you who may be new to my streams, I'm associated with 100 Devs, and what I tend to do is follow along with the classes and then do my streams structured around class content. So we'll do homework or we'll do a project that is similar to what's been covered in class and maybe expands on it a little bit. But with classes being on an uncertain hiatus right now, we'll see what we decide to cover in the next few streams. Yeah, I'm getting the vibe there won't be a class tomorrow. I agree, and so I want to pose the question to you all. I'm floating the idea of on Sunday maybe doing a quick intro to SQL, to SQL. What would you all think about that? Just while I have a captive audience here, what would you all think? Y'all, does anyone want to learn a little bit of we would just be not be super in depth, nothing super crazy, just a quick intro. Okay, so I'm getting some enthusiasm here about that. Okay, all right. Enough to be dangerous. Yeah, doesn't take a lot of. You don't got to know a lot about SQL to be dangerous. There's that lovely drop table one liner that you can do, which is very dangerous indeed. Run that in production. See how that goes. I'm gonna do all no. I will not be doing all of the Code War SQL problems. Probably just an intro to here's what SQL is. Here's basic queries, structures, that kind of thing. We aren't going to get crazy with it. I don't want to get too far out of the class syllabus, but given that class is kind of on pause, I also want to keep coming up with sort of creative information. And I feel like SQL is such a thing. It's so common. Like, right, you see so many job descriptions say like, requires some SQL knowledge, that I feel like it's remiss if we don't talk about it sooner rather than later. So I know Leon's going to touch on it in class eventually, but I don't know when that is. And so I don't want folks who have zero SQL knowledge to feel like they're getting, iced out of certain job opportunities. Yeah, exactly. Just like Safety Vest said, so many jobs keep throwing it on the sheet. So I at least want to give you a little taste. So maybe you could speak to it a little bit if you're asked a question about SQL. SQL was my gateway drug to computer science. Yes, Linda, me too. I started out with just being shown SQL and being like, okay, use this, and being like, okay, what the hell is this? And so that's what got me into it in the first place. Yeah. Dropping them tables first try. Hell yeah. D's Clouds, did you check out SQL injection on Try Hack Me? Oh yeah, I forgot about that. I gotta look at that. Yeah, you told me about that. Am I looking to possibly change jobs? No. I'm happy where I am, honestly. I like what I'm doing. I'm learning cool things at work every day. I'm just doing this full stack stuff for funsies, and and freelance clients for a little money on the side. Well, Jam, managing expectations here. Um, we're not going to get very deep into it. Just an introduction. What is SQL? What are relational databases? Um, how do you do simple SQL queries? What's the structure of a query? That, maybe some joins. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. Am I going to continue streaming after this cohort is complete? I mean, probably. I don't know. I don't think that far ahead, man. What are you talking about? I live in the moment. Yeah. I think as long as I'm enjoying what I'm doing, I'll keep doing it. If I ever stop enjoying it, then I won't do it anymore. That's kind of how I roll. I'm at the point in my life where I'm just like, man, if I'm not enjoying something, I'm not going to be doing it. So as long as I'm still streaming, you'll know I'm having fun. Oh, thanks, Steve Cloud. Yeah, I'm going to copy that link. Copy. Got it. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, let's find someone to raid, and make somebody's evening. All right, hang on, let me get it pulled up here. Okay, let's see who's online. Anybody have any recommendations on who to raid? Anybody they'd like me to raid? We've got a couple folks in my friends list that are online right now, but if anybody has suggestions, I'm always open to that. We've got our friend Juicebox Hero, who is very fun, and they're always fun to raid. So I'm thinking we might raid them unless anybody has any other suggestions. Yeah. If only Rascal 2 was streaming. Indeed. Yes. By the way, our very good friend Rascal 2 is also streaming on occasion, so please do give them a follow. Rascal always has fun content. You all know that. So yes, they are. Rascal is definitely streaming now, so go follow them, and so that way you get notification when they go live. Juicebox, yeah. I think we just rated Anthony not too long ago, so let's go ahead and maybe do Juicebox. We haven't done them in a while. So we'll hit up Juicebox Hero. Super fun, always high energy. Love them. And yeah, looking forward to it. So I will definitely. So I'm hearing a lot of enthusiasm about sequels. So I'm going to tentatively plan on that for Sunday. If it doesn't happen Sunday, then it will definitely happen sometime in the near future. I'm going to see, pull something together maybe, and we'll definitely do a talk about sequel. I feel like there's a lot of interest, and I would love to talk about it with you. So, all right, I will see you all very soon, and thank you all for the very fun time this evening. Have a good one. Trade is starting.